Hey everyone, bit of silence with you. I got some old chants playing, maybe you can hear them. But we are going to dive into whatever's relevant for tonight. It's Friday night. This is how, at least it's Friday night for me. This is how I like to enjoy my Friday nights, it seems. With some chants and some knowledge and wisdom and sharing and expressing and writing, exploring. So no writing tonight. We'll explore some Q&A or just conversations. I mean, maybe some people want to come on live, but yeah, who's here? If you're watching this after the live, because I will repost this, then it'd be recommended to maybe fast forward maybe a minute or two before we get in, but maybe take a minute just to kind of rest into yourself before we explore these questions. I mean, for those who've been here for a while, at least the previous lives, you know the drill. Questions and explorations, topics. The previous lives have a lot of really beautiful info, topics, conversations, there's a lot of powerful energy in those previous lives. So it's always recommended to go back and explore if you have the time, if you can make the time. Can you hear the chants? It's quite nice. Gets me in a nice mood. So yeah, I made a post today that was quite energy filled, because it's quite a topic at present regarding the V passports and related accoutrement of topics that come with that. Did our best to make sure that we are conversing about the topic in a balanced way, in a way that is keeping the frequency alive, keeping the frequency that we all share and carry in our hearts, and our energy and our intent and the clarity. Keeping a clear vision while not ignoring the realities of our situations, and so for each of us, depending on geography, we may be in very different places and in very different situations in regards to this passport and related things that are with that. But the reality is, in my view, this situation will be common for us all at a certain time. So it's best that we have a clarity and we are prepared within ourselves for each unfolding moment, and we're not getting caught off guard in ways that are bringing more suffering than necessary, because there's a beauty to spontaneity. Spontaneously being reminded that we can't go into the grocery store or this or that, because of all this. So I guess some spontaneity can bring a lot of lessons as well. And I'm also not a fortune teller or anything of the sort. So timelines and the shifting of these timelines and phases, etc., of how this passport and how the corresponding solutions may arise or unfold, this is up to God, essentially. It's up to and us participating within that. But something that no one really can put an exact time frame or say exactly what is to occur, at least objectively. And yet we can get close to this by just simply looking at our history, even just this past year, and tuning in within ourselves as to what we feel resonant with. And I got a lot of messages today after posting this post today, and if you haven't read it, I'd highly suggest to go read it, that there was a lot of resonance of people already in this space, and it's, of course, we're all, much of what I identified are things that are already underway, both on the passport end and the solution end. And so we are here. And how shall we navigate this unfolding phase? How shall we navigate the corresponding topics? How shall we navigate the potential discomforting aspects to it, or or opportunities that we may see in how we are to unfold moment to moment. And that was really the purpose of that post, to get as practical as possible, really, to get as practical as possible in our local geographies, in our local communities, our local families and frequency hubs, of other beings that match who we are and what we are about and what we are living, and recognize that the local aspect to our experience is returning in its importance. It's always been important, but it's returning in the lens, because this may not always be there, at least for the immediate future, and this is not really the same as what it is like when we are face to face in the flesh with someone, or in some sort of clear, direct connection that is not through an intermediary like what we are dealing with. Technology is a beautiful thing, but something to remind ourselves of. So I'd love to hear people's perspectives on that. I'll scroll through just in a moment of maybe if you read the post, if there's questions, or there was a lot of questions I got messages about, which I can cover or we can get into, or we can just be here and listen to these chants. Hey, Artsy, Bilo, Kelly, Kristen, Life's Eternal Liberator, I like that. Hey, Debbie. I'm in New York City already, and I already see hints of some of the things you related to. I'm thinking about moving more south. Okay, that makes sense. Chants are amazing. It's Gregorian. It is. These are old Templar chants. Templars have a interesting rap. They are from some of the factions, to be quite honest, but there is a purity to the chants here, and a purity to the essence that comes with certain types of music. And one thing that I was reminded about more recently, and especially as often sometimes when I'm speaking to things that are of this matrix, or that have to do with fallen teachings or false lights elements, or various faction or groups that things are associated to, it's important that we're never really in a black or white viewpoint on most things. Some things are kind of black or white because it's just, that's what it is. But there are a lot of things that are changing and healing, and all kinds of things. And one thing that we have to remember as beings of angelic nature and a direct connection to source, is that we have the power to transform things and heal things as it is bringing us joy or healing. And especially with music is an interesting thing, because everything in music has an encryption, and it holds a frequency, and it holds a placement within our template. Meaning, the translation of a song that a musician brings through, regardless of the intent that it carries, good, bad, or ugly, that encryption is held somewhere within our template, because we are essentially the anatomy of God. We are connected within that. So for us to move through the healing of that song, literally re-encrypting that song in a particular way, which is a very interesting process. So it's important that we just focus doing that for ourselves and the songs we have personal resonance to. But essentially this is supporting collective energy if the encryption is done properly, where others who listen to a song that may hold an encryption that is not so pleasant or something, it may have supported in the re-encryption of that. And this is also a conversation in regards to the V, right? Where as much as it's a painful and saddening process when we may observe another who we love that is going to go down that route, as I faced even today, it came up with a great friend of mine, dear, previous partner and friend and all this, that this may be the route that they're taking. And what's important is that we have to honor the free will of each being, but also recognize that we can contribute to the potential re-encrypting, right, of the energy of the V and many other things to come that are certainly intrusive, potentially all of the things, in not so a helpful way to many individuals. And so the more in which we are embodying this perspective that nothing's black or white, so there's always a possibility for healing in some regard, then, I mean, this is all we can do, really, And then, of course, choose within ourselves the actions that are of highest nature, because then we're not looking to make things more difficult than they need to be, right? Like, obviously, as I mentioned before, if someone thinks that they can just transmute the negative aspects of, say, the V or something similar, the question is, well, why haven't they eradicated all the negative aspects of their life already if they are so powerful? This is not a judgment, it's just a realistic outlook, right? We have to be real and humble with ourselves about where we're at, and not purposely make things more difficult on ourselves if we have the chance to not. And often, if the chance maybe doesn't seem like it's presenting itself, patience is more important at this time, right? Many are coming up with fears about, well, if I don't get it, then I can't hang out with friends, I can't go to restaurants, I can't go to the grocery store, I can't travel, I can't be with my loved ones, I can't this, I can't that. Well, my perspective on this is, yes, I understand, of course, we all would feel the same as we are in that situation, but the reality is patience is what's of most importance at this time, because we don't really know how things are going to unfold, and why put ourselves into places where it's bringing more potential suffering just to fit into a box, just to fit into a societal aspect of pressure and coercion and complete psychopathic behavior, truthfully. We can be more patient. And patience is often the product of peace. If we are not in peace, we are not going to be patient, because we'd like to get somewhere to find the peace, but we're never going to find it because the peace is already here. And this is the promise, the false promises of the glamour of external, rights and privileges and comforts and pleasures and desires and all of the above. That is what is being ridden, being ridden like a horse. These Illuminati factions are riding that like a horse. They're riding you, riding all the desires, all the unresolved attachments, all of the nature of these elements that bind us into ultimately what we'd be afraid to lose if we do not go ahead with the plan, don't go ahead with jumping through the hoops, because of course the V is just one hoop of many more, endless more, that will continue. You got the boosters, you got the endless pandemics, you got the endless social credit system, you got the be nice to the climate and be nice to all the genders and be nice to this and that and this. We need to be nice, but we are not here to compromise our morality or our ethics, our knowing, our truth, and go against the integrity of our heart, the integrity of what we know to be true. That's what I would say to this. So I'm going to go back and see what we're chatting about, because I know there's some chats coming. I needed this exact talk. Transmuting. Transmuting and transfiguration. Can you talk more about what this is? Well, transfiguration is more being able to turn essentially yourself into another form of matter. So I did allude to this in the solution aspects of the post today, where I was alluding to the idea that we may be able to access the elements of our ability to transfigure our bodies, to ascend into higher dimensional versions of either this earth or other places in the universe. There's many debates on where we're headed or where we can go at this time within especially the Christic community. But nonetheless, the element of our ability to bilocate or move our energy is really already occurring, because essentially our ability to move through our frequency ranges and live in completely other realities of other beings at this time is already a signpost of this occurring. Now, complete transfiguration of the body, that will be a different story, but the remembrance within ourselves of if we've been able to do this maybe previously is coming on board and online, and the ability to do that within the walking reality of this earth. The past 3 days, deep in nature and all this, you're in a different world, you're in a whole other portal. I sat with a beautiful elder woman who's lived off-grid in the forest for 30 plus years, has no idea about the majority of things of, technology and this, although she's in the know, she still goes into the city or the towns here and there. But the difference in the energy, or the difference in the perception, the simplicity of life It's not interwoven with a lot of things, and thus a portal opens up into a whole new realm and reality. And funny enough, she was writing a fiction book about a lot of the topics in the KS world without ever having come across that. So that was quite interesting. But you're staying in Quebec. Do you deal with the cold? Usually what do you eat in the winter? I don't know if I'll stay here or not. I mean, in the winter, we'll see. I know where my boundaries lie in regards to how much I want to play into any sort of elements with travel and all of that. Nonetheless, I'm not against anything, really. I mean, much of what I speak to is about resting in the middle, not holding too strongly to anything. I'm willing to change my mind about things. I'm willing to shift perspectives about what I may have viewed previously and change it into something else. It's just that it's never really going to be that different, because it's always rested in the same perception of a certain peacefulness and clarity about the trusting in myself, and that above all else. So, certainly here in Quebec and in going into northern Canada and all that, I feel to be a very safe place in oncoming times. So there's much convergence happening here, and that's why I'm here now. And there's more happening and more land spaces opening up, and there's much unveiling itself. Though, of course, much of what I alluded to is going to be practical for the majority of people, but there are other versions of how this may unfold. For me, if it was really necessary to just exist, in a cave or in the middle of the forest or whatever, with very, very little, that's a reality that I'm willing to step into. But I've also trained myself, I've prepared myself in many ways for a life of that to be, very easily learned. I'm not saying I'm a bushman or something of this nature. I just simply know that I've lived a less is more lifestyle for a very long time, as many of you have. So I'm not threatened by anything they can threaten me by, including my life. So at least the life we call this body, So the willingness for me is beyond maybe the majority's capacity. Who knows? Maybe there's many. I mean, I know many of you are potentially in this type of space, but doing the fasting lifestyle, living like a monk, living with very little money, sleeping on the floor for many years, having very little things. It's very flexible. I'm not confined. There's many elements to that. So I speak from that clarity, but yet still I'm recognizing the importance for all the things that we may look for. And I still enjoy my comforts. Of course, we all do, we don't need to go back into primitive living. That's not what the point of our transition is. It's about recognizing that there may be necessary choices that we are to make that may or may not be difficult. But as we surrender to that journey and that process and that direction, we will be prepared and we will be able to have our comforts and our technology and all the things. But we will recognize that much of it we may not necessarily even want or need. That's the point, right? So if we dissolve, that's why all previous teachings had to do with desireless nature. And we went through this. Desireless nature doesn't mean you live with nothing. It means you are devoid of the pressures of what desire brings, and thus you transmute those lower desires into higher expression, higher desire, the form of creativity. We're only really seeking to express our creativity in whatever form that looks like. For me, it's knowledge and wisdom and ideas and resources and all the things through what I can speak to. For others, it may be more artistic or all kinds of things. I mean, endlessly we find that within ourselves and within myself as well. It's not just one thing, So if we are moving our energy in this creative way, we will feel okay wherever we are. We will not feel like this urgency, we gotta do something, we gotta set up this, no. It doesn't mean that that's the case. The likelihood of rooting ourselves in particular geographies at this time is much higher, because this is what, quite frankly, may be the safest route. It may be the less riskiest route. It may be the route that feels most resonant. To just be in the bubble for a little while, to be with oneself, to be with others that are like frequency, right? And understand that what's most important is having the direct connection to our higher nature, to God's source, and hear the messages and heed those messages, whatever they may look like. That's ultimately, more and more what I've come into over the past years is trusting in the simplicity of that inner guidance, and only that, and not letting the mind or the journey of needing to be something or someone or all of this in the world guide the direction of desire, guide the direction of where I feel like I want to go, or this or that. Humbling ourselves to what's necessary, not just what we want, right? So yeah. So for those coming in, just say hello. I mean, we're just chatting. Hopefully you can hear the music a bit. I really enjoy this song actually. So the question, can I ask for personal advice? My life has largely led me to being targeted. Maybe I'm responsible, maybe I'm not. I don't know at this point. How can I rise? What advice do you have? Well, it continues to come back to working with the technologies that support in the healing of our template. Because yes, there is targeting through government, through higher dimensional entities, through lower dimensional entities, like all kinds of things. Targeting, of course, can happen. At the same time, as we become masterful in our process, masterful in the energies of all the things, going into all the traditions, all the work that we have come to know and that we have access to in this time, becoming a master of that within oneself, we will be able to deal with what is happening. That's just the reality. So we have to take responsibility for that and recognize, yes, there is elements in our template that we are contributing. We are co-creating these experiences, and the universe gives much room for mistakes. You have to remember this. The universe is naturally forgiving, naturally compassionate and understanding for ignorance, for us being here and forgetting ourselves, forgetting who we are, forgetting our contract, realizing the nature of this planet and this time matrix and what we've come into, what we've forgotten, what we've risked to be here. There is compassion naturally for that. So it's important that we have compassion for ourselves then. If God, if Source, if the Divine is naturally all loving and compassionate and forgiving, then we must be that for ourselves and recognize that there will be falters and mistakes and all of that. But it won't be seen in this way because we recognize we can learn from it. We can take responsibility for what we have done, what we've acted upon, and feel the consequences of that, face the consequences of that, but live accordingly. I'm in a tent right now, just praying a lot. That's beautiful. Life is meant to be rich, I agree. Luxury is a divine birthright. Luxury is not... We've come to know luxury that has raped the planet. The luxuries that have killed and pillaged. The luxuries that have been based on false science. The luxuries that have been built on just egotistical creation. But luxury in its most fundamental nature is essentially nature. Because all comes from nature, all goes back to nature. But to live in luxury, we are living in paradise. We're living in heaven. So it's for us to remember that, Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. Say hello if you're here. It's nice to be with you all. If there's any other topics we'd like to get into, we can get into them. There was a topic here of the black hole system and speaking to it. Well, yeah, the entire time matrix is a black hole system. We lived in this for, billions of years now. So it's clearly not a rush to get out. I mean, we're talking about billions of years. So we have to be mindful with that and recognize that we're, again, coming back to the compassion piece, understanding, knowing of ourselves, knowing that we're never, you can go off the deep end, but if we're here, if we're conversing, if we're connecting, if we're in this mindset, in this perspective, in this frequency, we are in a space where we're going to be dealt what we need to be dealt with. We're going to receive what we need to receive. We're going to be able to act upon what we need to act upon. So, yes, there's a black hole system. We've been living it for a long time. It's very much a reality to what we're facing here. The histories of this go back very far. You can go into Voyager's 2 books or other related literature in the Kaylonic system or similar, Lisa Renee, these people. and that will give some of the goods, right? It'll give a widened lens. Often we get into urgency, we get into needing to make something happen because of these short time frames we have right now. And yeah, there's a reality to them, but at the same time, if we widen the lens, we come into a more of a weight off the shoulders, a certain peace, and we recognize that things are going to happen as they are going to happen. And if we are simply in a recognition of taking responsibility for our actions, then we're not afraid of the consequences, because we know, well, I'm conscious of how I'm acting, how I'm speaking, how I'm thinking, to the best of my ability, and endlessly so. So as the consequences are faced, I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to humble myself to further learning, further uncovering, further developing oneself, moving through the frequency ranges. That's all we can do. That's the best way we can do. So it's important to stay discerning, yes. The nature of, as I mentioned last week, many of the false light teachings, the fallen aspects and technologies and systems, they are very much here. We interact with them every day. But at the same time, we have to just do what we got to do, and understand that if we continue to humble ourselves and move with discernment and patience, so much, if anything, comes back to patience. If there's patience, we are not willing to compromise things just to get somewhere, because we know we don't need to get anywhere. It's all unfolding right before us. So if there's patience, we can take our time. We can take our time with what we're reading, what we're exploring. Does this meditation feel right? Does this teacher feel right? Does this decision feel right? Is this for me? Is this specific energetic tool aligned with the correct energies? If I don't know, okay, well, maybe I can ask some people. Maybe I can play with it a bit. Maybe I can just wait. If I don't know, maybe I just leave it be. So it's important that we recognize that, again, it's not a black or white thing. We live in a black hole, but it's not a black or white thing, and that's it. And it's far simpler than we make it out to be, as much as the universe is extremely complex. It's extremely complex. There's such complexity, but yet we can live with a certain simplicity and recognize that it's like I always give this example of the 8-ball, right? If all the principles of God's source on this 8-ball, and you shake it, and it's like patience or love or compassion, and it shows up. That's the circle we see. Each principle that arises from on the 8-ball is the present moment. So we are God's source, manifestation of all of the principles of source, all the principles of God, the highest of the high. These are all accessible in every moment, but not all at the same time, because it's not all relevant at the same time. In each moment, we may necessarily need to give a little piece of this and a piece of that into the salad of life in the moment. So we are going to be shown what is necessary. We will be given the power to act in the correct moment, to speak the word in the correct moment, to be patient in the correct moment, compassionate, understanding, act with integrity, respect. It is all there in the correct moment. So if we trust in that, and we trust that we are this, and the manifestation of this comes in the right timing, we're not chasing anything, because we know it's there. It's already here. It's already available. Are we listening? Right? Are we hearing it? Are we feeling it? This is what it means to live embodied as source, to know that the avatar nature, the rishi nature of our higher self is embodied now, and it's speaking now. It is what's speaking now. It's moving everything. So if we guide ourselves in this way, we're not ever overwhelmed, no matter how daunting or challenging or chaotic or whatever things are getting, but we are returning to this integrity time and time again, moment to moment, moment to moment, and we're listening to what needs to show up to further embody and align and live the truthfulness of God in the flesh, in here, in this heavenly realm that is this earth. Right? So there's nothing other than that, really. It's just that the mind is very attached to past and very attached to future. So it distorts the vision of being able to see the 8-ball of what's appearing and what is presenting itself and what is here now and what is to be acted upon. And so as we do the shadow work and the healing work, and we retract the mind from moving into the past and the future with that fearfulness, it's not a bad thing to recall memories or to envision what is to come. Of course not. But there's a difference in how we do it. Of course, we know the difference in how it feels. So when we're falling into that energy where it feels fearful when we look into the past and future, that's where the resolution of those energies, the completion of these energies, is vitally important, because otherwise it will be a distorted view. We will not see clearly. Then we will not speak clearly. We will not act clearly. We will not think clearly. Not everything. So that's all really that it comes down to in the path, is an endless process of that. It's an endless process of continuing to check in, right? But it's not really a check-in, you know. It's kind of just a real-time living of the embodied nature. So let's let this calm music just fill the space after that, because that was something else, you know. I'm gonna go back and just say hello and what people are saying. Hey Tamina, good to have you here. Good to see you today. So soothing, heartfelt. Yep. Ascension Whispers writings go deep into this as well as the Voyager's books. Also grateful and happy in my heart to know and more awakening with divine truth. Yeah, nice. Truly being present in the universe as it is and trusting that our grace is sufficient. I didn't realize how comfortable I was in forward thinking. Yeah, there you go. See, that's the thing, right? The beauty of when we can have the vision of what is to come with grace, with presence, with peacefulness. We're not in fear of what's to come. We have solutions. We have clarity of what the path is ahead, but we're not also ignoring the realities of what's before us. And as I mentioned in my story today, which people were sharing, maybe I'll have to make it just as a post, denial is very present in this time because grief is present, and grief is a very painful thing. We are grieving the old world that is not coming back. So that grieving manifests as denial, because still, we look at, what's that post that says a conspiracy theory is really, the only difference between reality and conspiracy theory is 6 months. And it's very true at this time, maybe shorter. But we look at the past year, how many were in denial about what often many of us may have been sharing or speaking to or had clarity about, or maybe even we were in denial to some degree. And yet still, denial is very present and will continuously be this, of course. So many more are waking up, and when you wake up, you go through the grieving, and you will face the denial. It's coming down from the peak of the crypto, the crypto market or stock market has this diagram that shows the end of a bull market or the end of a very high peak, and the stages of it, and the stages going up. And one of those key stages is denial. The grieving. Oh, this can't be. It can't be over. It can't be it, And the beautiful thing is it's not over, because we're just moving into a new phase. It's just one now step coming down into a whole nother paradigm. So it's important for us to identify the grieving and denial, which I see, sometimes in messages or people asking me things of this and that, which really are just dancing around their own pains, which I understand. But these questions are often just dancing around the reality of what they know to be true. But yet the denial causes actions, words, thoughts, etc. that numb that pain and act differently. And then thus one feels a deeper level of pain because they are acting without integrity, without a clear... they're feeling just simply more and more disconnected to themselves and the truth in which they know to be true. So that's not fun, is it? So we just we see this, right? And all of us, including myself, we're all in this collective movement of facing this grief and realizing how we are to navigate this new stage, this next stage, this unfolding stage. Essentially into eternity. But that denial is very real. And so if we are really getting clear with this, because the more we deny, essentially, the more difficult things become. So if we are just being more present with that, we can start to retract where we are getting into that, and then again, not learning from the mistake of this past year, for instance, or past year and a half, 2 years, or whatever, what we faced collectively with this, where many have denied the inevitable, which is now here, very real, and continuously so, because we are really just essentially in the beginning, of this endless pandemic and endless this and that, and just all of these attempts right? The new norm being the lockdown, or the new norm being the various forms of fear and etc., which isn't really new because the majority have lived in fear for most of their life anyways. So if anything, we are coming into the new paradigm, which is that of eternal life, love and compassion and kindness and truth, peace, clarity, integrity, all of the above. Hey there. How do we pray for others given free will? I have a heart that just cares about everyone, but it's just out of my hands. It's in God's hands. Well, it's obviously very important that we are in a space of recognizing that we are taking care of ourselves first and foremost. Have we resolved all that is to be resolved within ourselves? And often the answer to that is no, because it is quite a process. So that's always where we first come to. And we recognize a part of the path, like in the yogic process, a part of the yogic system is bhakti, right? Or in traditional language, devotion, right? Or other language, service. So there is an aspect to our path, which is that. But it's not the only aspect, which I know you know. I'm not saying that you don't know this. But what I'm saying is that it's important that we don't get into the space of needing to be a savior. We can pray, but we're essentially, what are we always ever doing? We are healing the template and the anatomy of God's source that we are one with, but yet in an individuated expression of, a fractal of, the template of God, the template of source. So this is why learning the template, what is the mechanics of this being, this body, the multidimensional spheres, all of the levels of our transduction sequence, which is how we manifest. Where does manifestation come from? Where does it move from? What are the endless levels, essentially, that it moves through? All of this is important for us to understand, because that is the healing that is what's of most importance. And so when we are praying to heal something or someone, or we are bringing energy to them, we are healing an aspect of our own template, because we are perceiving something within our own template that is manifesting in the hologram that we're perceiving. So all is self in this sense. And that's actually how we don't wallow in the empathy or the sadness for another being or this, because we can feel that sadness, but what would we rather be, in a sense of peace or in sadness all the time? We obviously know what the answer to this is. So that's where, if we are playing the savior mode, we will feel more of the repercussions of that, because it's an imbalanced approach. And yeah, that's it, right? So we can share, we can guide, we can bring wisdom, we can point as best we can, we can share our experiences, many things that we can do. But we'll find when the imbalance has been lost, or the imbalance is feeling a bit off, or what have you, right? So I hope that makes sense. Conspiracy equals breath or breathe. I want to breathe with everyone. I want this whole planet to breathe easier. Yeah, nice. Words of wisdom. Thank you. Just scrolling through. So say hello if there's other questions or topics or whatever you want me to explore. We can do it. If you're just coming in, we're already getting into some real juicy things. So certainly stay aboard if you're here. But we can probably go back after this is going to be posted. I'm just going to go back to see if I miss anything. I think I got it. Nice. Yeah. What's funny? Even though this is a beautiful example. So I was mentioning about the Templars and these chants being from the Templars, but I believe this is actually from a great brother. Oh, what's his name? I'll have to post it. I listen to his music often. Let me see if I can just find it. My eyesight isn't the best, but I can't see. Yeah, there's a great, more modern chanter who's, in my view, re-encrypting these energies in a new way, with a new energy. And that's a perfect example of what I was speaking to. We have the power to re-encrypt things from the past, including our own journey, just like we transmute the shadow, we transmute the past trauma, we transmute the past circumstance, we transmute past behavior, we transmute past trends, which ultimately is all coming to the surface now, like in the movie Cloud Atlas. Has anyone seen that movie, Cloud Atlas, where it's like a cycling of past lives, all interconnected in this web where multiple lives living all at the same time? That's what we're underway with right now. It's a great resolution of all of this. Do you like Hildegard von Bingen yet? I do. I'm pretty down with that. Yeah. So yeah, that's that. I mean, if there's any other topics we can get into, we can get into that. I was just feeling good about the response from the post today, and I felt just some other things to clarify, with the post, and recognizing that what it really comes back to, right? It's not really about us needing to tell the future. It's not really about us needing to get into this urgent feeling of preparation. While at the same time, I would say it's a great thing to always be prepared. So that's that, and that will be different for each person, of course. But we could say the greatest preparation is to be in communion with Source and our higher self, because then, of course, we will get the messages in divine right timing and order about what is necessary for our path. What is the journey? What is to be acted, said, dived into in any particular moment, right? So it simplifies things. Yes, I've seen Cloud Atlas. Nice. Okay. Are you focusing on manifesting your material desires in this current reality, or do you feel something else is coming? Well, let's come into a clear look with that. As I've mentioned a number of times, you can go back and actually the last live we talked about the nature of being desireless. What is desireless? It was spoken about by all great masters of the past. Being desireless, like I've mentioned, doesn't mean you're just living naked in a cave. It means that there's no confines with you and desire, and thus the natural movement of the lower desires that are now essentially transmuted or dissolved or less important, they transform into the higher form of desire, which is creation, creativity, communion, intimacy, speaking through the word, creating through our higher nature, our higher power, our higher clarity, being of service in the highest fashion through our creations. This is the true desire of all beings, because all peace, all fulfillment, all feeling of clarity comes from the energy naturally being able to flow and move. So this is just simply living life, going on the adventures, connecting with the people, creating, writing, moving about your day in service, in love, and smiling among a stranger, and being with your family and your loved ones, and taking care of those around you, and what is necessary, being with what's necessary. How can we use our manifestation of power and ability to manifest and materialize what is necessary? The actions, the resources, the tools, the knowledge, the wisdom of what is necessary in each moment. That's going to be infinitely different for each of us, but it's going to follow a very similar trend, especially in these times. It's when we speak to the idea of manifesting our material desires, I guess from my own experience and from what I see in the new age or personal development, it has to do with possessions. It has to do with places to live. It has to do with visions on a vision board and this and that. And there's a reality to these things, but we have to really get real with ourselves about where desires have become needs, where we think desires that are whatever. I don't know. We need to get this car, and now it's now a need. If I don't have a car, I don't have this, I don't have, I'm not making it in life. I'm not somebody. I'm not leaving a legacy. I'm not living my purpose, or all of these, catch terms that are teachings, yes, and all teachings have validity, but, often, like I've talked about before, the things that got a lot of hype behind them, what has a lot of hype behind it? Well, this manifesting topic has a lot of hype behind it, and often I find those who are really hyping it have not really come to a clarity of resolving the initial path, which is the path of less is more, pain, a new relationship with pain, recognizing that a relationship with pain, a balanced relationship with pain, leads to natural pleasure. That's why in Buddhism, the Hinayana path is the entry path, which is often what people associate with Buddhism, which is, the monk life, the fasting, the minimalism, the less is more, the service, because there's a reconditioning of pain on that level before Mahayana, before Vajrayana, these higher states of Buddhism. So, we're in the West here, right? So manifestation of desire and manifesting all this and living our desires and being a legacy and all of these things, that's often the focal point. And this is usually entry-level personal development, in my opinion, you know. Authentic spiritual teachings are always going to lead you to a more balanced view with that. So I assume the majority of us here are in this space, or at least tuning to that frequency, because, I mean, what's all of it going to matter, you know? If it won't last the unfolding of current times, it's important that we're always investing, manifesting, clear on our desires about things that will stand the test of time, not things that can fall away. So if we are investing into things, whether it's our money, whether it's our time, our energy, our attention, into things that will always be relevant, always be there, always be fulfilling, always bring peace, always will more so be a reflection of peace and a reflection of what we already inherently have within, then we will be okay. We will not face the pains of when these things are inevitably taken away, because we are not attached to any of them. We are engaged but yet detached. So that's that, right? Is it a valid perspective to be clear with maybe getting a land set up right now, or starting a garden, or manifesting new connections and networks, you know, manifesting various other tools and resources that you think will be important for you and your family, regardless of what is to come with any sort of passport or any other agenda. Because this is not the point of why I bring up these things about the solutions of these times. It's just simply that it connects to what is happening in these times. For us to live through the solutions I've identified today in the post, and much of what I'm speaking to now, is apparent and a reality and an inevitability, regardless of what powers that be, Illuminati, blah, 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 whatever they're doing. Doesn't matter. Because the same solutions will be applied everywhere. The same necessary path is required everywhere. It's been spoken about for millions and millions and millions of years. That is to know the truth, to be the truth, and to live the truth as a being who knows themselves as God's source, and have a direct connection to God's source, and can live that moment to moment. So that will look very different for each person, but it's also very similar, because there's a template, right? There's a template that we're all tuning and tapping into, and that's why we're all here. 25 of us, 20 of us, whatever, that are here. So I hope this makes sense, and I'll come and, you know, follow up if there's other questions on that topic. Another question here. Recently read about Canada having an energy portal vortex. How are you feeling these new energies over there? Well, to be honest, Canada's vortexes and portals aren't really that benevolent. You know, I posted about this before. It's in a previous post about Canada. At least the main portals and stargates that are on the main portal and stargate maps. You know, the diotic crystal grid, the Nibiruan diotic crystal grid that is connected to Stonehenge is very much interwoven into Canada. Canada is a hub for the Anunnaki influence through these specific points. And so that is part of the reason why I view, and what we've, you know, received from other various teachings, like Lisa Renee was the most recent that brought this up, is that this is why Canada is the main testing ground for everything we're speaking to about the various control measures and all of that, because that is where the energy is very strong, and those energies are pulsing in. And so yes, you can feel this in the cities, like I could imagine you can feel in most cities, to be honest, but it is strong in some of the various places in the city. It's strong in various towns and various areas. You know, I haven't been across Canada. I don't know exactly what's happening everywhere. But, you know, like, it's not concerning to me, you know. So it's just, I mean, that's what I gotta say about that. Because at the same time, Canada is we can go on about Canada. We can go on about Canada being and holding like one of the greatest quality of lives in every certain magazine and review or whatever for the longest time in all of the world. We can go on about the majority of the fresh water on the planet resides in Canada. We can, even on the topic of pine, what's the most common herb right now that's selling out all these places? Pine tea and all of that, pine needle tea, to help with shedding or potential shedding or these various topics. Where's the most pine trees in the world? Canada. So, it's really endless what we can go on about the power and potential of what Canada is. But it doesn't, anywhere we are, we can find ourselves in a certain heavenly space. Every place is going to have some energy, but there are certain places, yes, that have more potency than others, right? And that's where we can get into a Christic map and look at the full spectrum of things. Yeah, there are other portals and things in Canada, but I go by a lot of what the Kelonic science is presenting, or these various other connected traditions, and no, there's not necessarily any like really important Stargate portal that is in those maps. Now, other people may be coming up with other stuff and tuning in other things. I mean, yeah, maybe, sure, but it's not something that I'm tuned into, at least right now, in regards to anything specific other than what I've just mentioned. And just, again, we are a portal. We are the Stargate. That's the time right now. We are here learning how to create the Stargate within our own being. So that is what is, in my opinion, an important focus, right? That we are remembering that we are that. Yeah. May I ask where you read about the portal? Okay, yeah. Ring official. Oh, hey brother, hope you're still here now. Interesting. Yes. Connected to everything, attached to nothing. There you go. Not sure about the source right now since I've been through a lot of info recently, but it explained the various portals being points of friction as well as massive waves of energy. Yeah, there you go. So I hope that confirms those things. We need that in a sweet post to share. Which post? I think you're referring to the one on the denial. Yeah. What are your thoughts about A Course in Miracles as a learning tool? It's okay. It comes, from teachings of Yeshua, but the teachings of Yeshua, at least in those types, are not always the same Yeshua, because there was two. But it's pretty good. I mean, I'm not like, I was never really drawn to it, to be honest. There's some elements to it, and as I've mentioned many times before, we take what's relevant and drop what's not. You could be walking down a street and a stranger just says something to you, and that could transform your day. So we have to be open and humble to what can come and what can be revealed, while also discerning, right, and going straight for gold, rather than getting caught in maybe intermediaries, which I could be an intermediary, so it's all the same. Right? But haven't explored it too much. I'm from Puerto Rico, and the energy here has always felt ever present, always possible. Thank you for your insights about beautiful. Question: where do we find a Christic map? Well, you can send me a message. Probably won't find it online too much, I don't think. Like I said, a lot of the Kelonic stuff I've been putting and accumulating into the Patreon. Not that I'm reselling this info, it's just I'm sometimes sending a lot of individual resources to certain people. It becomes a lot of, people are sending me a lot of messages about different things, or resources, or books, or videos, or other teachers, or this or that, or whatever. The first thing I always recommend is, if I'm mentioning message me for a certain resource, then please do, and just know that I don't always get to you like right away, so that's one thing. Patreon will be a bit quicker. But the other thing is, I talk about a lot of stuff, like, especially over the past few months, because I feel like this is my last run, in regards to like social platforms and this and that, and who knows what the period of this is, and who knows how many conversations we're going to be having online, and there's a lot of potentials here. So I feel that it's just simply time to share things that I may have known for quite some time, yada yada, etc. So that's what's happening. So on that note, if we go back onto all of the recent past posts over the past few months, you're going to find a lot of answers to questions. You're going to find a lot of practices. Every live I've been giving, except this live, I haven't given too many specific practices, but the energy is really potent. So that'll be a practice in itself that we can reflect on. But in every live I've been giving like specific practices every time. And each of those, you could spend weeks, months, years, lifetime on each of those practices. So although they're not all organized, and I know the timestamps aren't there on 3-hour lives and shit, so I understand you may not want to go through it, but I just recommend to go through and spend time with those posts, Because often we're just like really quick to like, who's the next teacher, who's the next resource, well, what's the books, what's the best thing you recommend, this and that. And right now I'm like, well, I'm attempting to the best of my ability just speak it, like right in front of you. So like, go into that, you know what I mean? Unless, like I said, unless you're looking for a specific, resource in regards to, KS work, or some of the stuff. Like my website has a lot of stuff too, although, some of it is a bit older. And my YouTube, once again, I've been speaking for quite a while, and a lot of my stuff, it really doesn't have that many views. It's not like I went viral or blew up like one of these gigantic teachers, but the things that I could recommend to you are often what I've shared. So I'd often suggest to go into that. And then if you have any specific core questions or comments or things, I mean, everyone knows that I'm pretty generous in my time to be like answering questions on lives, in DMs, blah, blah, blah. If you want to support, go on Patreon, et cetera, right? So yeah, just some points on that. With the realization of God, is it just consciousness and matter playing? I mean, it's just it. It's beyond even the identification of consciousness or matter or this or that. It's just it. Everything is it. Everything is manifesting as it now, endlessly so. Everything is it, being everything. The source, whatever term we're using, everything is it. So in that, we're perpetually guided. It's not like life just becomes a blob of nothing. No, like you're hearing me speak a lot. I'm using a lot of words. I'm using energy. I'm in it with you. So we're all in it. But to know everything is it is a different experience than forgetting that, or living like only some things are it. That's how we create gods and false gods out of things. God and the devil. We're separating everything, dualizing everything, thinking this is the savior, this is not. This is good, this is bad. Yes, there's objective morality, but when we know it, it's funny. Often people will speak to the idea that speaking like this will point away from objective morality. Like, of course there's good and bad. Yes, of course there's good and bad. Why would we have to reiterate that? Why would we have to say, we shall not harm a child, we should not kill, we should not steal, we should not lie? Why? What is the purpose of needing to remind ourselves from that? I know the purpose of it, but the individuals often I see who speak to this are speaking to what they just simply have not understand yet or come to know yet, which is, if you know everything is the manifestation of God, it doesn't mean you're going to just turn a blind eye to a child getting kicked in the face. You know what I mean? Like, you still know it is a manifestation of the source, because all of it is, but yet you will act with the most imperative love, which can be tough at times, and clarity. So if someone doesn't know this yet, and then they hear these messages being spoken, they immediately, well, no, of course there's objective morality, and there's this, there is good or bad, there is that. And that's exactly what the mind loves to do. It loves to create more never-ending conversations about hypotheticals that don't matter, because it's not what's happening right in front of you. It's not the reality of what's here and now. So this is what we are to focus on, and if we focus on that, we will always have the knowing of God within us, and the objective morality, or the commandments, which are more accurately termed the attitudes of mastery, the responsibilities, the virtues of source. You see? So, this is what's most important to remember, and to not get too caught up in the mind about this and that, right? It's important. Thank you for all these resources. They've been massively impactful. Beautiful. Extremely generous. Nice. Oh, yeah. Sing with the angels. Walk with the angels. You are an angel. I've been doing the awareness technique for an addiction which unraveled into a deep lack feeling belief. It's actually feeling worse. It's additional advice? Is there additional advice? Well, what's important is that the awareness method is not an excuse to wallow in pain, yet to compassionately be with pain. There's a difference. And so if we are willing to be compassionate with ourselves, with the pain in which we feel, we will be willing to be compassionate with another with the pain that they feel. Thus, what this means is we'll be of service in each of our moments. We'll not be too consumed with just our meditations, right? Or just this aspect of our life, or just that aspect of our life. We'll be willing to be well-rounded in our experience and move with the fluidity of what's necessary, rather than just to be with the wallowing, thinking that if we just pierce through this and we focus and we go, we can dissolve it. Yes, that absolutely can happen. So we're absolutely correct to continue to focus with the meditation, with that method, to continue to pierce through the veil of the illusion that this trauma, this energy, this pain is anything other than the source, anything other than love or it. But there has to be also a willingness to recognize that it can be a process, right? And it can present itself in our day-to-day experience, where we have to show up in a compassionate way as we would for ourselves through this meditation, but for another, right? In even the most simple of ways. You see? So it's a simultaneous process of both, like, what we perceive to be the inner and outer, but we see it's not so much the same. It's kind of the same thing. One thing, and we're listening to a lot of music, is we can sing into it. We can use the awareness method to find it in the body, to locate it, and we can sing it. We can sing it back into balance. We can bring through our voice, through the power of our energy, we can tone it. Just the other day I was chanting so loud in the car. I was going through every range my voice could possibly hit. The lowest possible range, the highest range. It sounded terrible. But it was so beautiful. It was such a necessary experience, and definitely it catapulted things almost instantly in other things that happen, in my personal life. So the importance of utilizing all the realms, right, of the path, and the voice and the songs and the devotional aspect of moving the vibration can be very helpful, right? And it can be very helpful to move into that energy and to work with it. And at the same time, we may feel, oh, it's not necessary, and we go back, into that meditation and into that focus. And then we also may feel we need to be out and be with somebody and connect with them and share our vulnerabilities, or to hear someone's vulnerabilities. It's not getting caught too much anywhere. And yet at the same time, yes, I would always recommend more meditation. It's always helpful if we are staying focused, right? We can do a meditation where we just sit and it's just like blah for an hour or two. We can do 20 minutes of really focused, really keep our intention clear, really zone in ourselves, and that can be extremely powerful, right? So that's where, when we're tuning into ourselves, we'll know where we're at. If we're not really feeling the meditation, but we feel like I gotta force it, I gotta be with this, I gotta go into it, and then it's like 2 hours of just kind of like unfocused, or you're just wallowing, or this, it's like, well, you kind of know like what's up with that a little bit, right? So also I'd recommend, like the songs. I'm speaking of music, but I'm speaking specifically also to Christic chants and various sacred songs that can be very helpful and potent in that regard, right? So that'd be something to chat about or message me about. Can we start a Telegram for sharing music like this, just uploading? Oh, that's a cool idea. Yeah, maybe I'll put something up like that, or yeah, I mean, that's a great idea. Maybe you can do that. Just openly share about it. But I'll make a note of that, because I have a lot of playlists of this type of stuff. Actually, everyone can go to it. I was just thinking about this. I have a Spotify playlist that is 2021 Christic chant mix, I think. Also remember, I've done a whole YouTube mix on this with visuals, because for me, I use visuals too. I'll listen to the music and I'll play the visuals, like, I don't know, Norway or Canada visuals, or something that represents what I'm feeling or what I'm tuning into with the encryption of that music, and then I'll use that to travel through my own template. Yeah. So I have that on YouTube. It's a full mix of just this music. Do you know something about 432 hertz? Yeah, I mean, it is a certain balanced frequency. I think it's the frequency of the heart, a frequency of the earth, a natural resonance. It is the original tune that music was played in for the most part. But it's not so, like, people talk 432, 432, 432. It's kind of oversimplified. I don't even really understand all it. I just know it's a bit oversimplified what people are saying, like, oh, you have a crystal ball, it's 432 or this. Like, yeah, it does help on some level, but there is a bigger conversation with it. It gets a bit more complex, and it gets into other frequency ranges, and it's not something I'm like a complete expert with, at least in this moment. I could probably tune in and feel like what's going to come more on it. I would say that what's maybe more relevant is to be focused on, like, firstly, 432 is a very beautiful frequency to listen to, similar to the solfeggio sequence. But something to really tune into when you listen to music is really feeling into the encryption. That's something to practice, feeling into the encryption. This can be done with anything, but music is a very easy way to do it, because although we may on the surface feel like hyped up by a song, or it feels really resonant, whatever, really feeling into the encryption and seeing what it does to our body, what it does to our feelings, our thoughts, and the more pure of the frequency we are holding, then the music we listen to will match that, right? And it will naturally come into alignment or resonance with us and where we're at. So it's still a mirror always, right? We're going to find what we are. But when we have that discernment and that clarity and that piercing intention of truth, we will find, the songs or the music or the tones and the music that comes through us, the creative expression that comes through us, that's of proper resonance and a manifestation of a neutral, balanced, and a peaceful energy that will be inevitably healing for us, because it is our own song. What's my name? Aswadak Korishik, I think. Thanks for answering our questions. You're dropping major keys. Oh, thank you. You're welcome. Well, yeah, if you're just coming in, I mean, today was a juicy one. I mean, every time's a juicy one, but this one was, it was probably one of my faves, because we got into everything that's relevant right now, and I can feel it today. You can feel the energy today. You can feel a couple things. It's shifting, and I feel, obviously, when we're talking about the V passport and all that, like I mentioned, many were in denial about this. Many think, oh, I don't think it's going to get that bad, blah, blah, blah. Well, now we're here. And the unfolding of the what is to come is not going to be really much different. If people think it's just magically going to stop because, I don't know, some magical thing happens, this is just not how things unfold in any place in nature. If there's a momentum to something, the momentum just doesn't randomly stop. So that's where we humble ourselves to what's unfolding. That's where we humble ourselves to the reality of our lives, and where we're setting ourselves up, and what we're setting ourselves up, and who we're with, and who we're connected to, etc., etc. It's as people were asking about manifesting, material desires and stuff. Well, the reality is the majority of that old paradigm is just ended. So we see within ourselves or others where there still may be a momentum of wanting to chase those dreams that just simply may not have relevance anymore. They never did, but now we see them through true eyes. This for me happened like 10 years ago, so, and endlessly so from there, deepening layers of seeing what is actually true, what actually matters, versus what we think matters, what we have been conditioned to think matters, what we're in momentum of due to the pressures of others, right? It's a time endlessly of just getting real, getting real with what actually matters, what is true. And from that, we navigate accordingly, and we exist in peace. The peace of God, the peace of ourselves. This chant feels like it travels through layers. It certainly does. Can you talk about something more about avatars and great masters incarnated here now? about the two Yeshuas. Well, yeah, I can. I'm finishing a post on this. Maybe come out next week. I'm not gonna say. Maybe next week or maybe whenever. But it's been written for a while. I'm just waiting to refine just some key things. It takes me a while to write some of these posts, obviously, not because it takes me a long time to actually write it. It's more finding the detailed encryption as best as I can. That's my endless devotion to just refining the language communication so that it comes with clarity. And even though we're using a lot of words, which at times is actually very useful, it's still communicating very simple elements. Right, and then maybe over time I won't use as many words. We'll see. I'm trying not to do the 10-part Instagram slides because I know people don't want to scroll through all that. But sometimes, these used to be long form blog posts, so it's just a funny thing. Okay, so on the topic of incarnated masters, well, if we start with the three Christ story. I mean, I'm just summarizing, and I'm not going to maybe go into too much. I've posted about it, and then it's in the Voyagers 2 books. It's covered endlessly in various Christic, teachings. Well, not that many. I mean, Voyagers and certain workshops that carried from there in the Kailonic system. The basic premise is there was three Christs. There was two avatars, one Jeshua 12, and then Jeshua 12 and Jeshua 9. 12th dimensional avatar, 9th dimensional avatar. 12th dimensional avatar is from our Iani family, our indigo shield. He is the bringer of essentially the original Christic energy, although there's been many Christs before him and many to come, and all of us are that in some level. But he was an embodiment of the true avatar, and with his mission to essentially heal the halls of Amenti, to support with the passageways of our stargates, which give us access to the endless realms in the universe, which is actually a very practical thing. People don't think of it as that because they don't understand it. But if you just understand that if the highway was broken and you couldn't get from here to Toronto or wherever you're going in your geography, you would want it fixed. So if you fix it, you can get to the place that you're looking to go if you're taking that route. So that's essentially what the purpose of him being here was, and many other things, but that was a core element. So Jeshua 12 was the embodiment of the true avatar of the Melchizedek Cloister Emerald Order and the Iani races, the Brennau, and all the founder races. He was the embodiment of all of that, essentially, and the messenger to come to bring that. And he translated many of the texts that we're getting in now, or we've gotten in the past 20 years, and he essentially completed his mission, to be honest, and ascended through Giza. He didn't get crucified on the cross. Jeshua 9 was a 9th dimensional avatar from more of the draconian lineages. His purpose was on some level benevolent, on other levels to be, presented as the kind of savior vibe or the avatar on the front level of the one sharing and teaching in the open. He was much more out there, and that's a lot of what you'll find in the Bible, because Jeshua 12 was much more private, and his teachings you'll find more in the Essene or the Cathar traditions. So the individual, and so, we got a YouTube ad, sorry. Arabi was the individual, I'm trying to turn it down here. Arabi was the individual who was crucified on the cross. He was giving a holographic insert in a dream, I believe, or in a vision, to make him believe that he was the Christ by Draconians, to look to infuse the martyr energy, the savior program, right? The savior program, which is to, hang yourself on the cross for others, to harm yourself for others, to be in pain for others, which is not the Christic approach. It is not the true way. So that was a part of that entire programming that was developed there through that whole story. So I'm highly summarizing this. It's more complex, and there's more literature that people can go into from the direct translations of the CDD plates and the Guardian transmissions. Now, people have endless opinions and ideas, etc., about what it is. And it's just a theory, I guess, on some level. So that's that. But on the topic of reincarnated masters, first of all, Jeshua 12 is back on the planet. Buddha, back on the planet. Bodhidharma, back on the planet. Who else? Ramakrishna, back on the planet. Who else? There's quite a few. I mean, many probably I don't even know. I mean, I'm just going off of the ones I directly either know the identities of, or just know through, past workshops or things that we've been given knowledge of. So if the reason why all this stuff is relevant, and even just the relevance of each of us potentially being an avatar, an ascended master, a previous master, someone we know, someone we even maybe are studying, chances of that may be slim because you'll probably identify them as yourself at some point. But the realities of many, if not, the core of these beings being back on the planet is a very important element to understanding our path. And the reason being is that our understanding of masters and enlightenment is like this dissolution beyond everything. You enlightened and you're beyond, and you never need to do anything else again, and you're just one with the self and God source. Well, we are already one with God source, of course, but we have an individuated path of remembrance back through this expression. That is a very long and eternal journey. And so, although there is a reality to beings coming here like us who may have already completed that journey, and we are back now to act as a support, it doesn't mean that we're just done. It means that we still have effort, just like we all have effort. We're all here putting in effort to listen, to understand, to go about our days. So it doesn't matter where you get on the path. There's always humility. There's always an eternal process of unfolding and further exploration and adventure. It's not like enlightenment has this awe and this idea of this end point, because we have forgotten what it is. We have forgotten eternity. And so if we come back to the humility of what this process and this path really is, then we won't have a hard time believing what I'm saying here about these beings being back, because we'll recognize, yeah, of course, everyone's back. This is the time to be here. This is where all eyes are on Earth. And of course, there's endless other beings that we don't know the names of that are in endless other places of the universe that, are on endless other, levels of evolution. So that is a humbling aspect to the reality, and it was a very transformative component to my journey, because, people say all the shit they want about, knowing Earth history is not relevant. All the non-dualists saying, oh, there's nothing but the self, you don't need to know shit about that, blah, 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 blah. It's just a bunch of gibberish, in my view, a lot of times. As much as these teachings can be very powerful, and I learned a lot from many of those types of teachings, we have to also take the full spectrum. If in fact what a non-dualist is saying is true, that everything is just the self and the absolute nature, everything is it, as I am obviously speaking to, which we've done many times in these lives, it means that everything is it. So we can talk about the entirety of the history. We can talk about the past lives and the incarnations and the activations and all the endless things. We can speak to all of it because it's all relevant. Maybe not all relevant to each of us at the particular moments that it's relevant, but it's relevant. So that's for each of us to then decipher within ourselves. Right? We obviously love coming to the simple non-dualist talk because we're so overwhelmed in our mind. So we want the simple teachings to calm us and bring us peace. But that's our own responsibility, to bring peace to ourselves, to be discerning within ourselves, so that we can decipher and compartmentalize what is necessary and what is not, what we need to put aside, and what is important for us to explore now. Right? And there will be, of course, beings that never have to look at any of this and not interested in any of the things that I'm saying here, because it may never be relevant. There are beings that will not ever awaken on this planet yet, but still will have the opportunity to go into other realms where they can ascend and they can move into the next aspect of their ascension or the next path of their awakening along the Christic path. So just come into that for a moment, right? That will relieve some weight. Even if we don't always do everything right, or we don't know all the things, or, we activate this or that or whatever, we're not prepared for the, death or something, it still doesn't even really matter all the time. Of course, it's different when we have a certain level of responsibility and a contract or a consciousness about the path that we can navigate, and with consciousness and awareness, and that's a part of the enjoyment. But not all beings, that's their journey, which could be any of you, including myself. So I'm going back. I'm going to scroll through a lot of comments, rightfully so. It's a very juicy topic. I've never heard any of this before. Yeah, makes sense. I didn't either. What are fallen angels and how do they How do they not be fallen anymore? Okay, I'll go into it soon, maybe. Just gonna go through all these comments. Wow, I'm shook. All right. What about the Buddha tooth that keeps growing? I don't know. I'm not sure about that. Who are you? You're one of them. Maybe. Not of any of the ones I mentioned, but that's powerful. Wasn't the message behind that Buddha that left the cycle of rebirth and reincarnation? Yeah. Of course that's what it is. That's why you tell any Buddhist this, they freak out. These are the people that freak out the most when I talk about it. Reincarnation is not a natural thing. Reincarnation is a product of the net field that has been installed by Anunnaki forces. It's a net field that causes us to lose our memory and get caught essentially in a web when the soul is looking to exit. Reincarnation is not natural. Adventure, yes. Knowing Earth history has been so helpful. Oh, I'm happy. For those who have completed a cycle on Earth already, do you think we choose to come back to Earth, or the decision was made for us? Well, it's kind of both, right? When you're surrendered to a higher will, we all have free will, but we also know what's necessary. But yet, we still all have free will. I mean, even if something is necessary, very important, we can still choose not to engage. It's just that it was very important for indigo races to be here now, because we hold the shield for all of this knowledge to come in. All the knowledge I'm speaking to you here is a product of all of us holding that frequency. If that wasn't there, I wouldn't be able to speak to any of this, nor would any of the other translations of transmissions of the Kaylonic work or Christic teachings, or any of the previous work that has come. It is important that all beings are here to support, because just being here, not doing anything, not being somebody, leaving some legacy, all that shit, that doesn't matter. You can just be here and hold grid, hold energy, be a nice person to those around you, be a compassionate being, live your life in simple means, or luxury, or whatever the hell you want to do. You being here, the frequency of that is a part of the shield. It's a part of holding the frequency so that the transmissions can come through, and they already have, right? So those who were at the workshops and those who were there over the past 20 years, that was their role. That was why they were there. I came into it much longer, at least what we're speaking to. Yet, we're all coming into it. We're bringing in the downloads through our own self, because we're developing that direct vertical connection to our higher nature that can translate the truth of the wisdom that we have been seeking through all the external forms, all the external books and teachers and all that. We're translating that directly. And who knows, at another point in the universe and gallery, someone might be talking about us. There you go. That was very nice. There's a good book. It's called Eternal Humans, Finite Gods. So just thinking of that title for a moment. Quickest, no BS method to awakening. Everything we're speaking about here. Which, to clarify, is some sections of Jnana Yoga based methods, and all of the yogas, but from the original sources of those methods. The Buddhist system, as we have traditionally known it, but a balanced version of moving through Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, and the Christic teachings, of course, Kaylonic science transmissions. These are all the relevant processes, but where does it all connect to? It comes back to recognizing we are one with God. We are the compassionate mover of God's energy through us, which is the golden rule. And much of what we've spoken about here, I'm not going to go into it again. How do we feel about the Mandela effect? Do you remember him dying in prison in the 90s, or the Monopoly man having a monocle, or Snow White saying "mirror, mirror on the wall" instead of "magic mirror"? Yeah, I saw some of that before. I mean, I can see it. I understand. I don't. Those examples I don't really know myself, and I don't know any other examples off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean, we're all collectively, seeing things through our own vision, and then we're collectively a part of the same. We call it a radial body. The radial body will be translating the same co-creation for all of us to participate. That's why we all collectively can participate in this earth together. But as those radial bodies are not dissolved, but the seals in which block them start to open up, we start to connect and open up to higher realities. and realities that others may not even really even be able to perceive. So this is what's relevant, at least, or this is reminding me of, in regards to how we're transitioning into these higher worlds, or into an earth that literally could potentially not be seen by others that are here. And it's already the case. It's already the case. You walk down the street, people are in their bubbles, they're in their reality. They're not seeing a lot of the things that we may be seeing or anyone else may be seeing. So yeah, that's what I got to say about that, because it's an interesting concept, but it's important to remember that, as we are co-creating among this collective sphere, the co-creation aspect is starting to shake, because the beings who are coming to a clarity in their frequency of individual, creation within their own world, knowing themselves as a part of the template of God, that will start to create our own individual reality more and more and more. And again, I'm just reiterating what I just said. This is what's happening now, and we're seeing it very clearly in what's perceived as the division right now. But it's not. I don't see it as one single division. I see it as infinite levels of perceptual difference. And so, in coming to the connection of our family frequency, the frequency hubs of beings that are sharing like energy, that's where it's going to continue to come into its own little hubs. And I see that happening more locally, but it is still going to be connected within the etheric telepathic grid that we can all kind of be with. And I know we're all experiencing that now, like a more profound level of telepathy and communion, because as these potential things shut off, or internet is blocked, or all these other things that are likely to be a reality in coming years, then we will not be hurting. There'll be no hurting, nothing missed, because that frequency and that opening, that connection, will be stronger than ever. And so, it's good for us to take time away from these things and all that, and be in the flesh more, be connected with people. One thing that I've been, like a simple example of something like that I've been contemplating over the past while, is because I often didn't want to take like long trips, or I felt it was too much effort or this. But a very practical thing is, if somebody that we know that we want to see, or there's something that we'd like to connect to, or we feel the resonance of moving to, and again, if we're not just doing this through the mind, but connecting through our direct connection to source and our higher self, we'll know what is important for us to be, or where to be, or who to be with. But one simple, like, practical questioning or contemplation is, if this person lived like down the street, would we just walk over and go? And if that's the case, then maybe the hour drive, is worth it, right? Or taking our time to actually go and visit this person or connect with them, versus maybe just doing it on the internet or on Zoom, or all the ways that we are doing it now, because we become less dependent on that, and we become more connected in the communion of physical beings, and in the flesh of this temple, this body, right, that is equally important as any other dimensional body that makes up this. See, so yeah, so a lot of questions. So I'm go back, or comments. Any advice on how to remember past lives as a possible ascended master? Don't focus on it. Focus on the technologies. Focus on, the intention is good, but focus on communion with your avatar rishi levels. Chant, just speaking the words Maharata, Kirashe, Kundare, Ekasha. Each of those will relate to a certain frequency. Those frequencies all relate to the core of your multidimensional self, and so you'll be able to begin to connect to those frequencies over time. But this is where it is important to know that these things aren't necessarily like, if we're focusing on them very intently, it can be helpful to a degree, but it often will come very naturally, right? In a very natural cognition. It's more important to just simply be listening to what's already here. The last time someone asked me that, the next day they messaged me and said, "Oh, I just said in my mind, I'm this person, a very famous musician, and I'm this person reincarnate, whatever." So it can happen very naturally through just the simple intention. And then as we're just focusing on going about our life, working with the frequency, the technologies of the various work that we're associated with or we feel resonant with, that will eventually at some point open things up. And it may not always be clear. It hasn't always been clear for me. The fog still is clearing on my end. Because remember, we could be at peace with ourselves and know nothing about those things. We could also know a bunch about those things and not be in peace. Just like I've spoken about breatharianism. You have people talking about breatharianism, and I've spoken about it. But some people think of it as like you're maximally enlightened if you're a breatharian. That doesn't mean that. Just because you're a breatharian doesn't mean you have activated aspects of your compassion or aspects of certain elements of your light body, or you've healed components of this or that. It's a non-linear combination to the lock. So if we just move with what's resonant without getting too attached to the outcome of that, just like anything we do in our experience, we'll find ourselves navigating things with grace, and we will naturally be gracefully gifted the insights and epiphanies and whatever we're looking to hear through hearing, through sensitivity, through deeply listening. Because often people think like visions and past lives are going to come like this blown out, like the psychedelic thing, or the dream, and sometimes it will. But a lot of times it's going to come in a very subtle feeling. You may just know. It's just a cognition. It's just, you can't explain it. You don't even know what to say about it, It's not even really that big of a deal, because it isn't. Who gives a shit who you were or what that... It may matter to you, but really what matters is how we're showing up now and how we're activating ourselves now. But yes, these things can be helpful. So, we act with it. My son has repeatedly said he has been here before, and he was angry as a toddler because he had to be back. Is it possible he remembers and more memories will come back? 100%. 100%, yeah. Things that I remember from my past don't exist anymore through Google. Things... Oh yeah, okay, I understand. Well, maybe not through Google, but that's not the only search engine. I didn't experience anything like this that young. No, a lot of us didn't. The children that are coming in now are like potent, and they're going to be activated for a very purposeful reason, because we don't have any more time to waste. Why isn't reincarnation natural? Well, I did touch on that. It's because of the net fields. The net fields are an unnatural, inorganic grid that surrounds the planet, keeps us in a prison, keeps the souls cycling back, unable to access the eternal. It's a part of the whole distortion here. Is there an individual process you can point to how we could access our pre-incarnate contract? Is there a way to change them? You can look at indigo contracts, which can be sent, or you can just go into the Christic sub, but again, you're probably not going to find it because Google won't show you. Within this collective, well, and on a note on that, yes, they can be changed. Indigo contracts can be changed, but not changed by you going and saying, I want to, well, I mean, you could, possibly, yeah. That's something that I'll probably try and get back to you. But if it resonates to do that, but it's more so a process of you fulfilling your contract, fulfilling the energy, fulfilling the quotient of energy that's required to move into higher contract. Contract is just level of responsibility, higher accretion level of frequency. What are you willing to accrete? What are you willing to take responsibility for? Right? We're all of equal value. That's why I said people who don't even do half as much work as you may still end up in the same place. That's a pill to swallow, right? The difference is there's a beauty when we put effort and we remember and we feel like not we've earned it, but there's a certain energy that we've exchanged for something. That's always going to be relevant. That's why it's always important for us to give, and then we will receive. Notice I said that 3 times. He talked about in the previous lives, if you feel, yeah, okay, amazing. Do you know to connect with and or find members to commune with from certain areas? Oh, in Australia. I don't know. Anyone else from Australia here? I can imagine. Feels lonely, man. Yeah, for sure. But that intention, you're just asking, it'll come. You'll find the people. Maybe just one person. That's a friend you need. Maybe a bunch. Who knows? But we will find when we ask, and we will find when we get out of the bubble. I understand the bubbles over there are actually becoming more physically rough, but I mean, straight up, we got to be like fucking wizards right now. Ninjas. Like we can leave the house, we can walk through the forest, we can do what we need to do. It's important that civil disobedience is a natural thing. I don't feel we are here to break integrity. We don't have to lie to do what we need to do. We need to face things in the way we need to face them, and that'll be different for each person. But certain tough love and warrior spirit will go a long way, while at the same time remembering. Go back to a post I made a little bit ago where I talked about becoming invisible. it's exactly what we're speaking to about the change in frequency. When we are pulling back our projections, where the projections in the world are not as strong, we become invisible. And that's why when we walk through places and spaces, it's like people don't even know we're there almost. And this is a reality, and we can become wizards with this just by setting the intention. So for those in like places like Australia, I mean, shit, start practicing that. And that sometimes may mean, like, okay, we're wearing a mask or this or that. I mean, for me, I wear a bandana here and then when I'm going to certain places, and I feel like a fucking wizard. I'd rather be invisible. I'd rather not stir up the pot. I feel like get into some shit in some place or whatever. But of course, if we're speaking to be invisible, maybe we can walk around without a mask or without this or that, and people won't even notice. They won't even say a word. You're smiling at them. You're bringing the peace. You're bringing the love and the joy. But that's circumstantial, and I'm not absolute with like, no one should be wearing masks, all that, or whatever. But there are things that we are kind of more black or white with, so that's it. Hey Corey, what do you feel about magic shrooms? Stay away. Are aliens the reason why there is a distortion? Is there an invisible war? Yes. Well, just understand that history goes way back, and whatever we think of as aliens is likely not what we're going to understand of as these higher councils that essentially defected, or the AI god energy, which has essentially defected through things like Metatron and these other councils that defected from their agreements and then begun fulfilling their own agreements as beings that wanted to be gods, their own gods and creator gods, and then rule their own universes. So but at that level of like when we think of Metatron, we think of a dude, but really the energy of Metatron is an entire energy collective consciousness. It's a whole other topic. So the term alien, that's why I kind of hesitated there. That's not really accurate. On the most immediate level, when we think of like reptilians, Anunnaki, the ape beings, draconians, spider beings like the Borga, these are particular beings and beings that are contributing to the perpetuation of distortion, contributing to certain things of fallen nature here. But then there's also a lot of beings, within these collectives that are healing as well, and they've decided to go upon their path, of redemption. Right? So it's important that that's made clear. Is there an invisible war for this matrix? Yes. Just as real, if not more real than what we see physically. What could continue to unfold physically. Because the main races that have warred for this planet, Anunnaki and Draconian, against each other, that is playing out through the politics of this planet, through the apparent division in countries and these groups and that group. That is the division we're seeing. And so the manifestation of the division we see here, which is actually really accurately depicted in Palestine and Israel, that's the most perfect example of the fractal of Anunnaki and Draconian war, that is manifesting in this unspeakable fashion. And so it's endless. I mean that journey has been endless. It's a long history. It's not something I'm doing it a disservice to summarize it. We can go into the materials and the things that identify that, or I'm sure we're all coming across it on some level, Yes, Neo's a little cutie. Mr. Neo. Hey, dude. But he doesn't like phones and cameras too much, so I don't want to annoy him. Where did the Nephilim fall? Well, fall will generally go into the Phantom Matrix, which has a parallel version of Earth, a Phantom Fall version of Earth. That's one space in which that can happen. There also could be a siphoning into like Wizardrek or Wizardek matrices. I mean, there is a whole Phantom universe right here in this, I believe, Eka, but then in the whole Akasha, I may be messing that term up, but we have the other universes, Wizardek and Wizardrek, which are usually connected to the Borga, which are the spider beings that are siphoning much of the energy here. Also, the being named Yahweh is a being that is in that fallen universe. Can you recommend some? Yeah, Voyagers 2. Usually buy that. A lot of this stuff, again, was a lot of Patreon stuff where you can message me and there may be some there's a good summary thing that I've been sending to people, but I think I'm just gonna put that in Patreon because there's just it's just like a lot of messages and stuff. I'm just kind of repeating my efforts there. Yeah, so we got a lot of stuff. I mean, this is boy, I mean, I don't know what to say. It's juicy. And on that note, if you're just coming in and you want to go back and rewatch all this, I mean, it's highly recommended to do so. And the previous lives as well, but this one, this one has a lot in it, and it has a lot of stuff that is really relevant to like right now and what we're dealing with now. I mean, every live is, it's right here. We're in the truth and we are speaking the truth, vibing with the truth, as best as we can. So if there's other questions or comments, then I'm open for just a little bit more. I don't know how long we've been going. 9:11. Ooh. Almost 2 hours. So yeah. So intelligent. Oh, you're sweet. I have just been graced with many different teachings, and I'm translating them to you. So, but I appreciate the comment. How do you feel about words and vibrations? I've always asked myself if cursing creates distortion, and still exploring. Well, yeah, I mean, English language is a cursive language, meaning it is a spellcasting language. It's opposite from Sanskrit, Hebrew, in a frequency range. So obviously, it's going to hold up, some profound distortions. Same with Anahazi, which is the original light language, very different than English. English was intentionally created as a cursing language. So this is why it's important to really watch what we say, to speak with clarity, to speak with importance. I mean, obviously, as I mentioned many times, I talk a lot when I'm on these calls, so I'm using many words. But I attempt to be as mindful as I can with the words I'm using, and I also recognize that I'm not. I have the connection to source. The words don't. The words speak through the energy, the physical words, the tones. The language that's being used is a product of the intention and energy that is fueling it. So it doesn't really matter. I mean, I'd much rather use a different language, but we have to be practical here in what we're dealing with. And also, as I mentioned, 2 hours, whatever, I'm pretty talkative. Majority of my day, I'm quite silent. So we have to be efficient with what we're speaking. When we speak with power and clarity and purpose, or we don't speak at all. We speak with kindness to the best of our ability. We speak with something that is going to that can bring value to a situation, or we shut our mouths. That would be the best way to navigate a language like English. And then if we can look to learn even subtle aspects of language like Anahazi through chanting, or Sanskrit, or even Hebrew, Arabic has some power in there. There's a beauty in these languages that can activate things. But what's most important beyond that is if we just work with the singing and toning. These are different tones that just naturally come. So if we work with our own tones, we will begin to start to transmute and move that energy in a more balanced manner, a more meaningful way. But we don't have to be afraid of the English language. But yeah, certainly, I mean, there's a reality to this, and we have to be mindful of the wording and the languaging that we're using. Like even the term infinite, that's been my term, infinite cheek, for the longest time, right? I've been meaning to change it almost for a year now. But so many of all the platforms I've used have been connected to that. So I've just kind of been almost like preparing to switch that over. But you've been seeing my new tag, Raja Sheikh, which Raja is a previous name I've held and in past lives, and it's coming in through now. I mean, my name is Corey Sheikh, but Raja is there, so that'll be transition. But it's just things like that. We're gonna become aware of things and how we're using, how we're navigating, and then things will change over time, right? So you don't have to be perfectionist with it, but yeah, would appreciate that on Patreon. Yeah, we'll put that up. Thanks for subscribing to that, Shanka. I think it's Shanka. Yeah, Shanka. Thank you, Corey. The feeling vibration is a lot with all of this. May the road rise to meet you. Keep going. Yes. Thank you. It relieves and liberates guilt, judgment in regards to words. Yeah, I mean, gotta be practical, but there is a very potent reality and power in silence, and that's why the meditations and spending our time in silence, right? Speaking when spoken to. Sometimes, these types of practices, they can be very, very, very potent. Raj is like the royal reign, right? Yeah, Raj, Raja, king, royal. These have been previous terms that have been used. Sheikh as well, but Sheikh is more spiritual teacher. That's usually what it means in the tradition, or community leader. That's what it usually means. And that's Sheikh is my original last name, right? Yeah, okay. Who else is here? I want to see. This has been very juicy. A lot of great topics. Highly recommend a rewatch. Very practically relevant. All the things. That's all I really care to do. If anything else is relevant, shall it be known now? Yeah, I'd recommend to go rewatch what I've said. The post I made today, if you can go and share, comment, share, tag, do the things on that, helps with the algorithm, especially if you resonate with it. If you don't, then you, of course, would do nothing. We have to be truthful with ourselves, but there's a lot of juice in that post. I would have rathered if I actually phased it in some sort of time frames, although I didn't want to do that because it does look like it's just a bunch of points of now. Although I did say phases, so hopefully people think it's like, no, I'm mentioning it in some sort of order, because it is that. And some of those things may be years out, right? So if we're reading it all and we're like, oh, it's all happening now, it's like, oh, darn it, I didn't want to. I'm endlessly learning on how to position things in the most accuracy, but at the same time, it's all kind of relevant, right? Because it leads to the same thing. It requires us to essentially act upon the same things and focus upon the same things. And really, in a sense, humbling our own personal desires is important, not as a suppression of desire, but as a transmutation of what is necessary, not what just we want or what our mind is coming up with. And I mentioned this very specifically about the listening to the messaging of our higher nature, of where should we travel, or what action are we to connect with, or the people to connect with, or the actions to take. The more we're developing that direct connection where we can truly hear and listen, or maybe use some like muscle testing or feel to the body, which often is where it's going to be found, we will have the clarity and the right timing, right? And we will be able to act with that, not from this mind thing. Anytime we're getting in this indecisive, oh, should I do this or that? I don't know. If it's because we're looking to take action through this mind, through the egoic lens. If we have a clear knowing, direct connection, communion from our higher nature that is saying, this is what's up, there will be no doubt. So, of course, small little fears and things may arise, but we will know what is important. And I find that's very important now because, especially with the travel topic, it's just travel has been such an indoctrinated idea that we need to do, but often it's done through the mind, and especially in a time where we're in a place where it's more and more important for us to understand the peace that resides within us wherever we are. Not that we can't travel, but that will give us the clarity of where and what is most important, or where and what is the place to be, at any particular time. You see what I'm saying, right? So that could take a while to develop, though. So it ain't no Band-Aid, and it's not gonna give you answers about, I don't know, all the topics that people are thinking about right now, all the time. But I feel like for most here, it will. Won't it, It's very soft. He's like a comfy carpet, little bear. That's what he is. All right, I'm just gonna go back to 1 second, Neil. He's licking my hand. I'm gonna go back on some of these. Thank you. Welcome. It's been really well. Yeah, you're welcome. Grateful for your recent post about psychedelics. I decided not to do them since years now, and connected with the inner knowing in regards to psychedelics creating distortions in all body dimensions. Yeah, it's a very, it's a very serious topic. We are endless playful children in the eternal universe. We are children of the universe, endlessly playing, and yet there are endlessly topics that are going to be serious, right? And one of that is our personal hygiene, our spiritual integrity, the health of our body, our multidimensional body, in all the ways. So the more we can activate our knowing and a remembrance of utilizing and engaging that in which is most inherently natural, organic, and riskless, then we will be we're fine eternally, as long as we continue that and stay humble. So, I had a really interesting connection this weekend. Actually, I'm saying weekend because I felt like I just had a weekend, but it was the middle of the week. But past 2 days, had a really interesting connection with a couple friends where we were sitting around, and speaking about our experiences with psychedelics, and all of us kind of going through psychosis breakdowns, going through psychosis, bipolar, one of my friends going to the psych ward, me, I had my thing, another one having like a whole other, phase that I was a witness to. So all of us went through it. And what was the common denominator, among all the spiritual things we were playing with? It was weed was very much there when we were involved in that, or other forms of psychedelics. So that's a really interesting thing, because often what I notice with people that are going through psychosis, that is the common denominator as well. Psychedelics are a common thing for those going through these intense psychotic type of breakdowns, that we can't blame anyone for thinking us going crazy, even though we're speaking to like very profound spiritual things. Like my friend thought they were going breatharian. My other friend, thought similar, just fast forever, or without any preparation, or without properly supporting the body in a certain way, or thinking, I don't know, they're a reincarnation of something, or this, that, just very imbalanced energy there. So it may be all the spiritual things, but very imbalanced, and we know why that is. So I just found that very interesting, right? I mean, I know this already, but it was cool to sit down and see a bunch of people who have released from all of that and seen very clearly how, as much as it could have support on some level of the path, there are many risks, and often unnecessary risks and suffering that comes with that. So if we're looking to really progress on the authentic spiritual path, we really have to get real with that topic. Same here. Yeah, nice. Do you fast to help your spiritual connection? If so, how do you do it? Because I want to do one soon. That's a question that's like been answered quite a few times on a lot of my posts and on my website. You can go there, or you can sorry, I'm getting a phone call. You can message me maybe, but just look for my posts on the fasting where it shows the detox pyramid. I think that's the best approach, because at least from a perspective of how to move into the deeper levels. But this is actually I'm happy you brought this up, just from the spiritual topic of it, is when we're understanding that anything that we do with the intention of connection direct to God's source, it's like the direct ticket. It's where we're going to face the greatest of tribulations, but the highest and most powerful and profound benefits or transformative elements to our path. So, and this is overlooked by like 99% of people, forgetting the power and the intention of the single direct connection to source as the primary intention, primary focus of our every moment reality. Everything that we engage in, everything that we do. That's why the golden rule is always the most profound teaching, because it identifies the most practical way to live in communion with God's source and as the compassion of God's source. So the knowing of that, the living of that, transforms everything. And when we speak to the topic of fasting, often in spiritual traditions, they would not speak to the health benefits that would come with fasting, because that was essentially a way to distract us from the core intention of the devotion to the single communion, the single intention of the communion with God's source, with God. So when we approach fasting, it is very helpful, if not the most important element, for us to be in a clear intention that the fast is for us to be in communion and in intimacy with source in such a direct way, because fasting is the physical meditation, and it leads to natural meditation, because your body just naturally wants to meditate when there's no energy going to digestion and endlessly eating, endlessly consuming all the things we put in it, even the things we think are good. So this is different within the fasting community, detox community that is primarily focused on health, because although there is a taste of the spiritual component, it's not the primary. And that's why we have endless people debating this fasting method, that fasting method, this herb concoction, that herb concoction, breatharianism, detox, urine therapy, this, that. It's just an endless debate, which I also have contributed on some level. But I make it an effort to not solely be talking about fasting, because that just becomes another god. And so in the direct connection of source with our clear intention, we will be guided to the methods, the herbs, the approach within the fasting that we feel will be most resonant. But again, when that direct intention is not there, that's when we get into these endless complexities within the Western world. When we have juice fasting and fruit fasting and herb fasting and urine fasting and coconut fasting, and because it's the product of the egoic mind that wants to endlessly go into all these things. Yes, there's an aspect of creativity to it, but there's also an aspect of inefficiency with it, because someone could prep all their life for certain fasts and still have difficult fasts, whereas someone could prep for no time and be in complete devotion to source and have that guidance through their higher will to move into that fast as a devotional meditation, and there they will receive endless more benefits than one who potentially has been doing it for years. So it's important that we're tuning to that energy as of God source through everything first and foremost, because then it won't be about fasting, it won't be about meditation, it won't be about starting off-grid community, it won't be about learning tantric sex or this or that. It won't be all this compartmentalized stuff. It will be a living communion in everything that we do through this connection. And then we will have more trust in our everyday moments that just because something we're doing doesn't look spiritual, it's actually the highest of spiritual energy we can connect to, because it asks of us to engage the knowing that we are source, not the intellectual idea because we've learned it and we've studied it and we've understand all these elements, and now we're living through that primarily. We primarily live through our direct connection and knowing that we are God source. And then from there, yes, the endless studies and all that comes as well. So you can see it's kind of like a chicken before the egg. It's not an absolute thing. If it was that easy, everyone would do it, of course. But it's just a very clear reminder that of what's really real, what's really important. And that simplifies things, but that can be daunting, because then you are it. There's no intermediary between you and it. You are it, and you are living it, and thus your responsibility to live it in each moment, to uphold truth, will always be there, because you won't be able to see anything but the truth. And then you will not be just hiding in the soft love. There will be tough love at times. There will be challenges. There will be things that will have to be faced and brought up and spoken to and engaged. But it will all be coming from this sense of peace and clarity within source. A knowing that you are that. So then there's peace, like a mountain that doesn't move. And that was, we were meditating yesterday, and me and friends, and we were asked, what do you want to be? I'm like, I just want to be this rock. What does a rock need? It needs nothing. And it's stable, endlessly stable, existing for billions of years. Yeah? So I'm going back, a lot of comments here, so. Every time I fasted, I never forced it. I just listened. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly it. Do you have info on urine therapy? Of course I do. You can send me a message. I have a really good article on that. It's in also my course. You go online, I have a course, a very complete detox purification course, and I speak to it in there. And there's a bunch of resources connected to that as well. Nice. Okay. I'm seeing that so many of my family take the jab, and I'm witnessing something change within their field, as if different things are shut off within them. It's a little hard to explain. Thoughts? Yeah, I mean, I also think it's a mirror of what's already there, what already was shut off, and it's just amplifying that potentially. But you're going to know your family more than I would. So, yeah, I mean, I was speaking to people this past few days, and, individuals that, some that may be very sensitive and adept with energy, others maybe not necessarily, but both speaking to the same fact that when they were intimate with someone, like giving a hug or even just talking and being around, that they felt like this almost like radiation or just like this weird energy and had to kind of move away, or other things happening from that. So Now this is the third time I'm hearing it in the past day and a half. So I can relate on the topic of I'm in nature the majority of the time now, but there's times where I'll stay in the city more, and but lately I just can't go in there. To be honest, I used to take bike rounds all around the city. I go in, but now it's just so clear the difference. It's such a dense energy that's present there. Not something that can't be dealt with, but it's unnecessary. That's how I see it. The frequency doesn't match. So, I made a post this week about my experiences in nature, where I'm speaking to like a fractal of memories, like a psychedelic trip, but with sober, that comes to me when I'm in nature often now. And this doesn't happen really that much in the city, right? The waves are getting interfered with. The radiation is strong, 5G, and then amplifying through the people who have the V. So, I think there's very much a correlation with that. And, if you have people who are close to you, family members, as I mentioned today, I had a talk with someone who's quite close to me that, is considering it now due to her job and, wanting to travel and do all the things and whatever that, I've already been feeling a bit of distance too, but seeing more of the realities of where that will lie as that maybe chapter opens up, if that is what's going to occur. It's just inevitable that intimacy or intimate time is not going to be there. So yeah, I mean, I'm not in a kind of boogeyman hunt with like cooties around shedding and all of that. I've been pretty clear about that, where if we are taking care of ourselves, we're going to be able to take care of ourselves, but it doesn't mean we unnecessarily put ourselves into places that are not conducive for us to experience consistent levels of peace, clarity, and balance within ourselves. So if that means not being around loved ones who have it, if that means not going into the cities, if that means yada yada yada, then that's what it is. And that's a hard pill to swallow, obviously, but we all know like what we need and what we want, what's best for our energy. So that has to be listened to. It doesn't have to be. You can choose to listen to it. And so yeah, I'm not about the whole cootie thing, but I also see that there's a lot of, I don't know about this. I can't speak like I know everything. I don't think anyone does. And so then, well, if we don't know, it's best to be being mindful, and again, you're speaking to it yourself. You're feeling it just like these other people I've mentioned that are feeling it, and I'm feeling it. So it's like, well, there's clearly something there, right? So yeah, thanks for sharing that. That's an important topic. My whole back area vibrate in a circle of motion nonstop around people who are vaccinated. Wow. Then goes away 3 to 4 hours after. There's a protocol running shared by a man from Spain that helps detoxing the magnetic material inserted by the V. I'd be interested to see what that is, because, yeah, I mean, I'm interested. I'm not skeptical, but I'm interested, mainly because some of the people that I know who are quite pivotal within the detox community that I've been associated with, specifically Dr. Morris, let's say, who is, worked 150,000 patients, has healed, has supported and facilitated in the healing of every possible disease you can think of, and yet his response to his methods to clean out or heal the topic of what has been inserted now through the vaccines, he's not so sure. And so if someone like that is not so sure, as much as I know that there's many others that are speaking and may have other advanced methods, that's a topic of concern, because we don't know, and we have to get real with the realities of what actually works and what doesn't. But I'd be certainly interested to see what the details of what that would look like, because I truly believe anything and everything can be, but we're dealing with more and more difficult things, because the reality is I've been at this for myself for 10 years and I still haven't healed everything from the vaccine damages that I've gone through. So I mean, I'm not the only person doing this, and there's other people who may be way more proficient than I am. But I mean, I've been pretty devoted, so, and I'm endlessly continuing to focus on it. So it's a long process nonetheless, but we're dealing with something that is potentially exponentially more powerful than previous ones we've gotten to. So to think that it's just going to be detox with a kind of this protocol or pine needle tea or something like this, I don't I don't personally feel that that's the case right now, but I'm very optimistic with the power of miracle. So yeah. My bro wants to know about the Messiah. Well, yeah, we spoke about it. We spoke about the three Jesuses earlier today. I may have talked to you guys, Josh, you and Zach, about that. Maybe I didn't, but we went into earlier in this live about the three Jesuses, where there was two avatars, Joshua 12, Joshua 9, and then the being who got crucified, right? So Jesus, the real Jesus, Yeshua 12, did not get crucified. He ascended through Giza, but I think we talked about that when I was at your place. But the Messiah, in my view, is the program of saviorhood, right? Christ energy and Buddha nature are not new. They are not solely represented through Joshua 12 or the Buddha. Those are energies that are long, the billions, like endlessly long, like going back, right? So those energies have always been there. So the topic of the Messiah often is spoken to as the Savior, the one being that will come and save. But the reality is, the return of Christ was actually the return of Yeshua 12 when he came first in at the birth of Christ 2,000 years ago. That was the return of Christ, because he was here to heal the halls of Amenti, which were the Stargate passageways within the core of the earth. And so that was the return of the Messiah at that time. That was actually the return of Christ. Now what we're facing is the reality and remembrance that we are that Christ, and we have the access to remember that and activate that within our multidimensional space, ourselves, and connect to our higher self in the same way that a being like that did, or other beings that have come before. And so every tradition has spoken to a Messiah, but what they're speaking to is the return of the energy, or the remembrance of beings to return to that energy themselves and to know themselves as that. The other version of the Messiahs may be the indigo races, which many of us are, which are beings that have been those past masters who are now coming back and have come back, like we talked about about an hour ago, which is the reality that we are walking angels, we are walking avatars, we are walking ascended masters. Many of us just have not remembered that yet or pieced that together. And so we treat Illuminati and government as these all-fearing, powerful gods, and yet they are nothing in the face of the angelic races. So when we understand that that's who we are, and we are essentially the Messiah for ourselves, not in any egotistical way, we are to be as humble as possible and to remember ourselves and many other beings, hundreds of thousands, millions of other beings who can also be that and remember that and are that. That's, in my view, what the nature of all the teachings of Messiah would speak to, right? There is a reality to the reverence we can have to a being like Yeshua 12, because he was the only real avatar that was coming here in the most immediate history, because the planet couldn't hold a being more than one avatar. It would blow up the entire planet. It was that powerful, and that's why we have such a devotion to Yeshua. Many of us do on some level, whether we're Christian or not or whatever, because he was the avatar that holds the connection to millions, essentially, of incarnate beings, incarnate cells. They're all part of that same soul frequency. He is the image of the soul frequency family that so many beings are connected to. So it's hard to understand sometimes, like one being many beings, but we are that. Because at our own avatar level, we are 1,728 incarnate cells. Right? The one we're seeing now is just one of them, and there are many others that are interconnected with that family. And so when we come across certain people, certain beings that we feel a direct connection to, often what we're coming in contact with a being who is connected to our avatar, our rishi level. Right? And these are terms that are commonly used in the past to identify beings of great power, great benevolence, or mastery, because they are the embodiments of the avatar nature, the rishi level, which we each have the ability to embody on certain levels. Each of us have a different contract or element to that, but the majority, if not all of us, are going to have connections to just those direct elements of ourselves. So that's my viewpoint on Messiah. I mean, this is also obviously coming from also my studies in many traditions, and just being able to translate and understand this is my own flavor, at least, on it. But I don't know, hopefully that lands. Zach, Josh, good to have you guys here, though. Come visit again soon. NAC, NAC, Zinc, Astaxanthin, Vitamin D3, milk thistle. Yeah, I mean, um, yeah, I mean that's possible. I don't see that clearing out the all the effects of the vaccine. I guess you're speaking just to the magnetic components, but um, yeah, I don't I personally don't see that being a way that can completely clear out what we're dealing with on that level. But I may be wrong. Of course, I may be wrong. It's just, yeah, yeah. That's interesting though. Thanks for sharing that. My friend in Thailand has spoke to me of a bioresonance machine, very advanced tech that they say they can restore the body after vax. Don't know how true that is, but is what they claim. Yeah, it's definitely possible. I feel it's also something with the telomeres and that stop the codons um, that are impacted. Yeah, okay. Save this live piece. I like that. Save your hood. Hey Raja. Yay. Hey. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, man. Welcome. That's a great topic though. Really important topic because it gets us away from idolization, gets us back to ourselves. Right? Gets us back to ourselves and the work that we each individually have to do. But like I said, right? Each of us have a different role. Some of us have maybe a more I wouldn't say like taxing role, but a role that requires more responsibility. So beings that may not be in access to this understanding or knowledge or path, they may not wake up, right? We always think, oh, everyone has to wake up. No, that doesn't mean that, because there's beings that may not wake up but will still be able to move to the next phase where they can, essentially be hosted into a new ascension pathway, or a different level of their path that isn't like the abyss just because they didn't wake up in this lifetime. Excuse me, right? So it's not to say we shouldn't be putting effort, but it's just making sure that we're not we're just, I don't know, focused on our own path. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, just the magnetic components. I feel the damage just go way beyond that. Yeah, okay, that makes more sense to me. So I guess like the question is like, how does that support someone, these things? But it's great that we have these combinations of things that can be shared. Especially because when we're dealing with something like that moving in the body, like something like dry fasting, which is like the supreme tool for healing, isn't actually necessarily going to be as effective sometimes as using maybe just distilled water or liquids, green juices or herbs or the fruit juices or whatever, because that will help actually flush out things in conjunction maybe with some potential herbs or some of these other things that are being used. At the same time, dry fasting in the right period or the right intention, with the right circumstance can be, all powerful in regards to healing. But yeah, I mean, I don't really know when it comes to that topic a lot, it's a big unknown. So it's good that we're just having the conversation at least. What do you think about loosh? Yeah, loosh is, the first term that came up when you mentioned that is the topic of sexual energy. Sexual energy is the main loosh that is used with these higher dimensional beings that feed off of the negative dramatic waves that are primarily triggered through sexual misery programs, sexual dramas, relationship dramas, and all of the things that come with the sexual energy distortions that are on planet. We can look in every angle of our society and we'll find sexual distortions. It's so obvious. And so it's important that we recognize how that affects us within our own selves, because it's funny to see when we start talking about this, the interference actually comes. You can feel it, because this is a very important topic, right? As we stay balanced within ourselves and within the space of how we are acting integrally with our sexual energy and how we are managing our ability, which connects to what we spoke about before, which is the transmutation of lower desire into the higher form of desire, so that we are transmuting the lower consumptive patterns into the higher expression. And that higher expression provides endless more benefits than the lower consumptive desires, because it's everything we were actually looking for in the first place. And so as we move into activating that creative energy in a consistent manner, we are less of a feeding ground for higher dimensional beings that feed off of that loosh, as you're saying, right? Which is essentially just negative energy. right? Energy that we have within ourselves, where we're influenced and we're feeling off, and but there's beings that literally feed off that, just like a parasite feeds off dead meat, right? Or candida is feeding off the fungi and all that. So as we are getting clear specifically with the sexual energy and balancing that, transmuting it or dissolving that energy, often I've recognized that sexual energy is actually, the way we feel sexual energy that we have come to know is actually not a natural way to experience sexual energy. And it only occurs when we are willing to essentially move our all of our intention back into that place of humble service, right? Into compassionate action, into clear, focused peacefulness within ourselves, where we're not chasing endless desires that still feed that loop, right? That go into all the things, all the things that we could be black or white with. We could say, oh, food's bad, entertainment's bad, watching movies bad, going to a show is bad, all that. That's not what it is. It's recognizing we can be in balance with these things. I would say it's more important for people to not necessarily be a breatharian than it is to simply eat without gluttony. It's more important not for people to just be celibate, not have sex, but to have sex without lust, right? With devotion and love, right? It's not about not watching movies and entertainment and not looking at anything in the media or whatever. It's about recognizing what makes you actually feel joyful and experiencing joyfulness when you listen to a music or watch a TV show or watch a movie or do these types of things. So we can see the difference in how that's navigated. And that's how we retract the cords and the energies that are fed off of by higher dimensional beings, or those who continue to support in the fueling of that, so they don't die. Just like a parasite says to eat the meat again, like out of nowhere, or when you have that lustful thought out of nowhere, or it's late at night and you want to, I don't know, eat the food, the bread, the crackers, the whatever, when it's really the candida, the fungi inside of you that's saying that. So this is where we're getting real with what is actually us. Just because there's a voice in our body that says something doesn't mean it's us. Just because it's our voice thinking a thought doesn't mean it's our thought. So that's where getting real about how we feel and what we're really discerning. And that's why it's so important to be with ourselves, to be less all up in the things, and to have a clear connection to what is true, for us individually, not the endless topics of everybody else, or society, or government, or all the beings feeding off of you, all that. Because they become null and void when we activate our flame body, when we activate our true light body, when we activate our true connection to God source. That stuff will be there, be noticed, just like I mentioned right now. As soon as I start talking about it, the interference is there. So, we're becoming masters in our own right. And that masterful energy is not afraid of the dark. So I'm just going to scroll back and see what's up. You're really making us think, and I love it. Nice. Lush is huge. I felt so many feet of him. Yeah. Yes. See, people, yeah, we can relate to this, right? So it's quite a topic. I feel like all this COVID fear is to have our world brothers and sisters being used for fueling them. Yeah. Random question. What do you think of the COVID vax? Will it change my DNA? I mean, we've been talking about this pretty much all night. So for people just in this right now, we can go back and watch a lot of what I've talked about, even though I didn't really talk about this particular, about what's in it and how it can be harmful, or, I can't say it can be helpful, so it won't say that. But most of my perspective, actually, even in the main article I wrote about the V, I didn't really go into all the details of why it's bad, or what's in it, or it's a poison, or this and that, because there's many other people doing that way better than I felt the need to go into, or the effort to put in to bring all that. And I spoke about it very clearly in my article, and the reason why is because for me, the knowing of not getting a V is like the knowing that I have hands. I'm absolutely certain I have hands because I can see them and I can move them, I can feel them, and regardless if it's an illusion, third dimensional, I know I have hands, and that's that. Not getting the V is like the same knowing. It's absolutely a knowing. There's not one doubt in my mind or any possible circumstance that would make me look to get it. So why would that be? Well, one example could be, let's say just on the health reign. For me personally, past 10 years, I've been to the doctor maybe once, and healthier than I've ever been. When we look at the health system that is advocating you getting this, it's the same health system that's responsible, let's say, for, or the science that backs it, in, let's say, the United States, 1 in 2 people getting cancer, 1 in 3 people getting heart disease, 1 in 2 people in the world having a mental illness at some point in their life. How many people are obese and overweight, especially in the United States? And the United States is a fractal for everywhere else. So how in the world, like if you're going to a restaurant and you're looking at the reviews of a restaurant and it's saying, this is the worst food, this is absolutely terrible, and you decide to go, I mean, all power to you. I mean, I guess that could be, you could have a resonance. Your higher self could be telling you to go. I don't know. But the chances of that happening, especially if we're using practical examples, that we're looking for some good food and we're going to find the best food that we can have access to, why in the world will we go? So stupid. So let's just get real. Like, everywhere we look, disease seems normal. You die of a disease. Most people die of a disease. Everywhere we look, sickness, people unhappy. At least in the modern world. Everywhere I look nowadays, I see beauty. So it's a funny thing. But, in the modern world, when we really look, or we go on Google and research this, because I'm not coming across 1 in 2 people getting cancer, but these are the statistics. You pull it up. So this is the paradigm that we're listening to. What do we need to go into any other conversation about what's in it? Why should we take it? This or that? I understand the fears. I understand, why we think we need to get the passport and all that. Some of us may feel like we have to. We got to go see a loved one. There's endless rationalizations, ideas, theories, excuses of why this and that. But if we come back to the foundational reality that the V topic, the modern V topic, not the homeopathic model, which even that, it can still be refuted, but let's say the homeopathic model is the original V that has some validity, or has validity in certain accounts. The modern V topic that we've come to know, that's been fueled by the same beings that essentially want you dead, is the biggest lie, the most dangerous concept in the entire aspect of the health world. So let's become our own doctors and realize the power that we have within ourselves to navigate our own health, to not be afraid of any of the things that are around us, these boogeymen, these cooties, the things that we're going to catch from the outside that are going to kill us, the mosquito with the West Nile is going to kill, and all this shit. Bring it back to where the power truly lies. Remember the fact that you give that power, you give that energy, the creative power to have over you or your loved ones or this and that or whatever. So, a loved one of mine came and asked me today about, I may have to get it, like, should I get this one or that one? You got to be crazy to come ask me that, You think I'm going to recommend, like one, I've seen on my deathbed before I recommend one of those. So this is not being extreme in a way, this is just being real. Like, I think there's some tough love that's necessary with this right now. I'm still, like, some people have been following my stuff and, like, actively liking and commenting and stuff, and still ask me if I've gotten the V. It's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. Why in the world? It's not even because I'm, like, afraid of what would happen to me. That's not it. It's because it's just so absolutely clear. Like, it's so, like, why in the world would you even consider it? I know why you would, but, like, when you really come into it, it's like, no, man. Get real. Get absolutely real. With yourself and your life and where you're headed and this and that, and find the courage to really look and see what does this being really actually feel about this and that, and and then move in that direction and act upon what's necessary. Right? So, we're each gonna do what we're gonna do. We got to do what we got to do. Blah blah blah. But at this point, we just got to get real with each other. Hold each other accountable on some level. We each have free will, and we can do it kindly. You know, I'm not judging anyone. Anyone wants to do it, I don't judge. I go on a bike ride. I go on bike rides with my dad. You know, we have a bit of distance. We're on a bike ride, but of course he's gotten it, and the rest of my family, I still love them to death. You know, but doesn't change my perspective. That's for sure. Let's go back and see, because this is quite a topic, right? Yeah, thanks for mentioning that. Not using the full term on the questions would be helpful, right? I'm not using the term as like because of that, obviously. Thanks for mentioning that. It's getting harder to avoid the V. So let's get real why that is. Like we went in earlier. It's getting harder because of why. We have strings, attachments, dependencies on the provider of the system. That is primarily why. Of course, we can relate it to loved ones, people we want to see, people need to be around, etc. But it is very much connected to that, and then of course connected in the relationships, right? So yeah, I mean very much so the relationships. But really, what it's connected to desire. It's connected to our own limitations. People will fight to the death for their own limitations. So we come and get real with that, and we get real with that, we see what we have to let go of, what is time to now be dissolved, or what will dissolve on its own. If we just keep getting true with ourselves and be like, I'm not going to act upon anything that nullifies or encroaches on my integrity. So if that's the case and we stay true to that, we may get close to it, we may consider it and all that, but we won't ever go in any of those hoops. Because this is one hoop of endless hoops that are endlessly come, and it's not the first hoop. We've been in these hoops. So now it's all of us waking up over the past 10, 20, 30, 40, whatever years, and we are stopping jumping through hoops. We are done. No more hoop jumping. These powers that be and all these, we're not afraid of them. We're compassionate. We're understanding. Half of them are aliens. They look at us like ants. They're hybrids with no heart, no emotion. They cannot even see clearly. AI ruled. No mind of their own. What do we default? These celebrities doing all this stuff. You're not even looking at a true celebrity, a human. You're looking at a fractured soul with many personalities like Jekyll and Hyde. You don't even know who you're looking at. What is there to blame with these beings? That's not what we're here for. That's not what we place our attention on. We just get real with ourselves and what we would like to do. And then if any of these beings or whatever come to our doorstep or they're interfering or that, we're clear about what's up. That's all. That's all that's necessary right now. Believe me, when we get clear with that, it is not fearful. Fear is not there because we've realized our power now. And there's a willingness to face death of this body because we know there is no such thing as death. That is what the entire spiritual process is for, is to realize that death is an illusion. And we are eternal. We are walking angels. And so in that sense, all of this stuff, all of the power that has been given to the powers that be, that we keep calling them that, they are weak. They are to be respected. They are very intelligent. Be humble. But in the face of Source, in the face of God, in the face of our own desire to be in alignment with truth, everything is weak. Because nothing can face that. No darkness can face the light. You know, the smallest match will light up a room. So remember this when you're considering all these things and getting into all the webs and all that shit. Nah. Not worth it. Not even worth it. Entertain going down those paths with those conversations, these people getting it and then wanting other people to get it. They need to shut their mouths. It's not in their place to speak to it. Because it is time for those who have truth to speak. Right? So it's called humility now. We have to have humility to all. We listen to all, surely. But we're not doormats, you know? We're not here to listen to these messages endlessly when we already know the truth. That's why if you know the truth, you can get off the call. You don't even need to be here. You can live your life. You don't need me. You know, you don't need any teacher. We live it. So this is, you know, this is it. This is this time and this topic. Like I said, the V isn't the end. It's a tipping point, like many tipping points before. When you look at a tipping point, there is no real tipping point. You endlessly zoom in. It's like the points on a circle. So there's these endless hoops. And those hoops are every moment that we are acting without integrity of our knowing. So as we act with integrity of our knowing, we're stopping jumping through hoops, chasing carrot sticks, following the consensus, the collective, everyone else, the peer pressure, the bullying, the coercion, the manipulation, the complete abuse and psychopathic behavior. And we do it with grace and peacefulness. Like I said, I'm not saying, if you need to wear a mask sometime, you need to do this, you need to do that. We can be mindful, but it's becoming less and less available for us to be unclear with our stance, because it's at the doorstep now. It's always been there. We just haven't seen it. So now it's like when we get something happens and we get the shock. We're like, oh shit. But we saw like endless signs before that, right? So. Watch the interview with Vladimir, who healed Trump from COVID interview about the V. Okay. So I'm going to go back. I know there's probably a bunch of comments I'm missing right now, but, that was a little juicy run. It's just they're threatening our jobs now, but yeah, of course. It's really a lot of illusions getting revealed at once. V is just one, but big focus. Yeah, exactly, Debbie. It's getting harder because we are facing economic destitution, poverty, and being outcast from society. The stakes are high. Yeah, well, I mean, let's look at the opportunity here. Let's look at this as an opportunity, right? Maybe that forces us to be more connected with nature. Maybe that gets us really clear about our value exchange. Maybe that helps us get really clear about who's important to us and who's not. Who's really our friend, our family, our connection, our soul. Who is not that. Maybe it gets clear. We get clear with ourselves with where we really feel like we need to be at this time. Maybe we get clear about where we're investing our time, energy, skill sets, money, resources right now. Maybe that's what all this is pointing to. Right? As I mentioned, what is the entry level path in Buddhism? Hinayana. What is the path of Hinayana? It is the path of less, the path of balancing pleasure with pain. So the fasting, the minimalism, sleeping on the floor, waking up early, the cold showers, enveloping oneself with pain so that they can experience the natural pleasure of themselves, not avoiding pain so they have to experience external pleasure. To the degree we have come to know our pain is the degree in which we will experience our natural pleasure. To the degree in which we have avoided our pain is the degree we will seek external pleasure. So run that back. Quote it up. Meme it. Do whatever you got to do with that, right? That's where we're at now. So yes, it's threatening all of the attachments we have to these things, and rightfully so. We may have families, we have children, we have responsibilities, but we open our eyes. I just met a bunch of people, like farmers, communities, people who have food, they have land, they have things going on. There's people, there's things. Things are happening wherever you are. I guarantee it. In the smallest of ways, in bigger ways, medium ways, everything in between. And it's not really about the external things as much as it's our own attitude and our willingness. Are we willing to compromise our integrity or not? And that will run its course based on the momentum of where we're at. And that's why I said it's not like a one moment thing. Just because someone gets a V doesn't mean they're never going to ascend or their soul's doomed. That's not necessarily the case. It's just that it's endlessly the message anyways. Right? And so now we're facing it as a very, we could say almost urgent message, even though, we're in an endless unfolding of time. But it is that because we're being faced with the realities on our local physical level. It's not just the children in Africa starving. It's not just the concept of Illuminati in some random place. It's not just, there's these aliens that, no, it's right in front of us, happening to us directly in our immediate reality. And progressively that will be revealed as the frequencies elevate. That's the process we're all in, and we've all been in that. We all know this. What do you think is the core difference between the people who can see through the BS and the ones who fell under the spell? Not neglect, not education. I'm just gonna keep going through it. I'll come back to that. I'm just kind of like I just want to be silent for a moment. It's actually what it is. So I'm just reading through some comments and I'm letting my own energies just rest a little bit. Okay, I'm gonna go back up to this. Well, it's not really a question I can answer for everyone, right? Everyone will, in a sense, answer that for themselves as to where they're at. Because you say like, oh, there's two sides. There isn't. There's many more sides than two, because like you said, you could have someone that identifies as spiritual or this, still getting this, still not unaware of what's going on. You could have someone that's unaware of any of that, not spiritual, never talked about anything that, but it's very clear that they're not engaging in this, or they can see through this or that. So there's endless combinations. There's an apparent division, yeah, but even so, that's a bit like kind of playing into the black or white energy. I don't necessarily see it like that. All I see is that there is a combination of frequency that is occurring on and it's polarizing to a certain degree, and there's many that find themselves in all different levels of frequency, and every day we are kind of moving through and merging through different levels and spaces. But the simple disconnection from our true identity, of forgetting of what our true identity is at the core of the majority of the delusion or ignorance. If we knew ourselves to be in direct communion with God, if we knew ourselves to be the avatars we have sought out, or the messiahs we have waited for, or the gurus that we look to sit at as a disciple, or this, that, and the other, if we knew ourselves to be that, not as one who doesn't have to put effort and we're just that, just inherently, not necessarily, there's much effort, but in the reality that is our true identity, and that the reason for us being here is first and foremost to remember that and go through the work of that remembrance, to embody that through, to embody the heavens, the 15-dimensional expansion of our higher dimensional self within this incarnate being, and then to live that, to speak that, to know that, not necessarily in any way, not necessarily like this on IG Live or in front of a million people, or live in some legacy and all the things that I often poke at in the New Age. You could be someone nobody knows about at all, just in your friend circle, not on social media, just holding grid, being yourself, being amongst animals, treating everyone you meet with respect and love and compassion, right? Living that integrity in real time, which again, it often will look like something of service, because we're naturally drawn to creative service, and it's a beautiful thing. So that is what is fostered. That's what manifests through the connection to this. If we do not have that connection, or if that is not a part of our remembrance, it doesn't necessarily mean we're doomed. It just simply means that that's just not the route. And for some, that may mean that they are going down a very dark path. For some, there are many beings on this planet that are not human. Let's remember that. There are many beings here that are not human. There are hybrids. Right? If we all had the veils of our human flesh removed, and we were showing who we actually are, where we're from, we would all look very different, and we'd likely be very afraid when we look in the mirror. Not necessarily out of fear of who we are, but out of like shock. Oh shit, this is where I'm from, this is where I'm like. I mean, maybe some of us already know, or we've seen ourselves in that way, but again, if we look around and we start to see, like you start seeing about, some of the news reporters or celebrities or certain politicians or beings, and you start to see some features or some changing in the eyes, or weird little things happening, and you start realizing, wait a minute, that isn't a human. So that's another element. Not everyone is a human. Not everyone even has access to the ability to be aware in this way. Often for those who are born, maybe under the age like 40, 30, that kind of thing, coming into, even beyond that, maybe like 50, 60. But the younger the beings are, the more they're going to be connected often to some of the original race lines, because that's what's necessary right now. Whereas before, sometimes some of our parents, or grandparents or things like that, they may have been such in awe of our ability to learn or do things or be aware, from early childhood, and that's because there's a different coding. There's a different genetic makeup. There's a different template that the beings coming in with have. So that is just simply going to be different. So we can't, again, if we think everyone is just walking our path, you know what I mean? It's not it. Not always, certainly. And so there's a compassion that is to come forth, right? Just like I mentioned about the compassion for these celebrities or this and that, everyone like demonizing all of them, Again, if we've ever actually understood how those beings come to those positions, what is the stages of the torture and the mind control they have to go through to be there, to the fact that the soul that they're looking at, the personality you're looking at, is a fractured soul personality with many different personalities in the same body, completely different in different times. On the surface on the television, looks like the most loving, nice, charismatic person, and then in a different realm, completely different. We may have been an embodiment of this degree, because we all have experienced the fractal of that mind control on maybe lesser degrees, or maybe even the same, some of us. But it's a fractal that has been like a virus throughout the entire collective that we are all engaging in and healing. So it's a compassion. It's an element of understanding, compassion and understanding for what we're observing in the others, and in that we will be at peace. Because we've come to accept ourselves and be at peace with ourselves, and then thus there will be acceptance and peace with others, no matter where they're at on their path. Doesn't mean we can't be tough loving at times. Certainly not. Draw boundaries, all the things that are natural to one who knows truth. Right? There will be no tolerance of anything other than that, really. But it can still be kind. And then we can potentially support them. Maybe there's something that can be supported with, just as other beings can support us, just as we are support ourselves. Right? What do we got to do to gain memories of our past self? We went into that earlier today, so I'd recommend to rewatch this. Yeah, it's a great group tonight. I really feel it with all of you, and I appreciate all of you for being here. Yeah, I'm feeling quite complete now. There's a lot of topics, and it's an integration for all of us. To kind of go back and to really be with these topics, almost 3 hours, right? So, if you only watch some of it and go back, it's gonna be on live. It may not be on my main feed. I may, because I realize I don't want just my face there. I'd rather have all the quote, the written posts that I write, because I find that they're just, I like them better there. So you may not see it right on the wall, although it will be there initially. I'll just leave it there initially, but it'll be in the IGTV area. And then I usually save them off and I'll put them on YouTube. And then maybe we'll stamp this. I know Barbara's around. Yeah, Trevesier, she's been helping with time stamping, so that's been really helpful, even though I haven't used the most recent ones. But maybe I'll clip this out, some smaller videos we can share around. If you feel called to share this one or whatever, comment, like whatever you like to do, feel free. Yeah, that was pretty potent. I'm feeling that too. Yeah, you're welcome, everybody. I really appreciate you listening and being here. Obviously, this doesn't happen without you. So, it all comes from the questions and the topics and the energy of the people here in the conversation. It'd be nice to maybe do this on Zoom again, actually. I like doing it in this format because I just can get my points across, and that's what it is. But it's nice to be able to connect. Obviously we're all from all around the world, even though I'm advocating a lot of local time with people, which is very important. But we can connect as much as we can and have conversations. So that's what makes us feel not alone and sane, and not questioning or feeling guilt or shame for doing just normal everyday things that are natural and inherent to an organic being. So remember that. But yeah, that's good. So deep love to all of you. yeah, enjoy your evening, night, day, morning, etc., and be well.